So hello everyone, this is Deepak Parekh, and today we are having a very interesting roundtable. Today we'll be talking about something which is very exciting in this sector. While we always see things being talked about commodities, imports, digital agriculture, and we have done 4 such roundtables in last month on these very important topics. But we wanted to have the last roundtable revolve around something which all of us very keenly observe. That is how the startup ecosystem is growing in India, how it is trying to solve some of the challenges which the agriculture sector has been struggling with for multiple decades. And in any startup ecosystem, the venture funding is very critical aspect. So hence, the last roundtable of this series, we thought let us talk about agriculture venture funding. And today we are having two set of panel discussion. One where we are focusing with the investment part of it. So we are having some very seasoned investors and ecosystem builders on the funding side. Then I'll be running a small keynote session because we have done a lot of work around understanding the challenges of funding, both from the entrepreneur's perspective as well as investor's perspective. And there are some of the myths which we wanted to bust. So we'll be having a 10-minute keynotes on busting some of those myths. And then we are having the second panel, which is typically the panel of the agri-entrepreneurs. And we are having some of the most seasoned entrepreneurs lined up to discuss about the work they have done and the challenges they have faced. So with that, without further ado, I would like to get into a first panel discussion. I would request my team, can we enable the videos and audios of all the panelists so I can introduce and we can start talking? So great. So now we are having all our panelists. So I'll like to introduce them. So I'll start with Sanjeev. Sanjeev has been a very seasoned professional. He has been in the industry, headed some of the large corporations, and currently he's venture partner at Capria Ventures, and he's independent director at Jitwork. He's a seasoned mentor, coach, and investor. Thanks a lot, Sanjeev. I believe everybody will be joining this panel today, or audience, as an audience also for the roundtable, knows the great work you have done, invested in some of the topmost startups in India. And as I always say, you've got a Midas touch, right?
Thank you so much.
Next time you are investing, I would say, watch out to him. When he invests, you also do. Next in the line is my dear friend Jinesh. Thanks Jinesh for always supporting whatever endeavor I do. Jinesh has been someone who has been a pioneer in fact, telling this country what EdTech investment is all about. As a formative part of the ecosystem, he has gone, I'll say that strength to strength in building some of the top startups today. If you see, if you name top 4 or 5 startups in India which are having global presence, Jinesh is the one who backed them, and very sharp mind when you analyze startups. So again, I would say if Sanjeev and Jinesh both are investing, your chances of success is now 100%. I would now like to go next to Shalini. Shalini, apologies. I should always like to introduce women first, but I am generally gender non-biased, right? So I always believe all gender is same. So I go in flow of the question I'll be asking. So Shalini is again very strong voice when it comes to impact investment. She is managing partner with 3i Partners, who has been investing in impact focused startups, which is the need of the hour, and agriculture is also a part of being an impact segment. Her intervention are very critical. Then I would like to go to Shiva. Shiva is again someone who loves to invest in deep tech, and very few VCs have been taking that path because it is a game of patience. So we'll understand from him that how to be patient in such a volatile environment. Next, we are having Dr. Abhishek. So Dr. Abhishek is, in fact, he's not from the VC community. He has been someone who works at a grassroots level. He is CEO of Atal Incubation Center, Banasli Vidyapeeth. One of the very reputed as well as celebrated AIC, which has done fabulous work working in the rural area, working with women entrepreneurs. And he has built close to, I think, 130 to 140 entrepreneurs at the very grassroots level. I had opportunity of working with AIC Banasli, and the experience has been fabulous. Welcome, Dr. Abhishek.
Thank you, sir.
Then we have got Ashudeep. Ashudeep is head corporate development at Absolute. Very interesting addition, because I also wanted to have someone who has been a successful startup and had a decent run, and now using that success to also invest in other startups and the ecosystem. and to build that. So we'll also have a perspective of how a startup which is having good capital in their banks look at investing in other startups. So very fabulous panel. Thanks a lot for being here. And I start with you, Sanjeev. So we already seeing there is a funding winter, right, which is impacting not just Indian tech, but globally. But do you see that there are also some Indian factors which are having bigger impact on Indian ecosystem? Because I've seen, if you go by the percentage wise, the overall global downturn is not as bad as it is happening in India.
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. I think there are big people like Jinesh and so many others, so they would have a better perspective. But I will nevertheless give you my perspective. One disclaimer is that in my flow of discussion, I may at times sound a bit skeptical, but I'm fully behind the sector because I really want it to succeed. And I believe that a lot more needs to be done in this sector if we are to succeed as a globe and if you have to make it sustainable. But let me first of all talk about the word which you use, winter. First of all, I thought there was no funding winter at all. Okay. So sorry for using the words, Deepak, but it was the bloody unruly free for all summer in 2019, 20, and 21. And some of us who made it happen are sitting around here and several outside also. So I think we made it pretty bad. And hence, in perspective, this looks like winter. I don't think there is a winter at all. We are seeing, I think, some semblance of sanity in both the investors and the founders, right? And it's like me trusting, when your son is 21, 22, 23, will you give him $1 million and say, I like your idea, go behind it, without guiding him, without mentoring him? I think all these young founders, no matter how brilliant their idea is, they need guidance and mentoring. And on the question of funding, are we all investors? You and I are investing, everyone is investing, right? So where is the money going? Some VCs are picking up money. Do VCs have less money? They don't have. All of us have enough money to invest, but we are being a bit more sensible, a bit more careful, and we're not chasing things like GMV, etc. We are trying to chase things which will make sustainable, long-term business successful, right? So I would say, are the VCs like all of us going to go have a party and distribute freebies? No, we're not going to do that, right? So if at all anything that is happening right now, we are paying for our excesses of the past, right? So I don't see any slowdown here. I go to the Silicon Valley 3 times a year. I don't see any slowdown. Good ideas are still getting in money and getting in enough money. It is just that we don't see every single idea being betted upon by everyone. I think we are all looking at, will we get to profitability? Will we get to a low burn very fast? I am personally not at all for high burn. I've myself put up businesses, and I think it is important that organizations are built for the future. And so definitely, if you ask me, am I going to put up money behind an organization who's into trading? No way. Trading, I'm not going to put up. But I'm going to put up, if someone is chasing a good value chain and is looking at what consumer trends are and is then betting based on the consumer trend, they're betting on the agri side, not forward, but backward from the consumer. At the end of the day, you need to sell it. So if you look at a value chain, don't look at agri alone, look at the entire food value chain, look at food processing, etc. Only few people make money, the input people and the ultimate output people. So you have to be in that game. Don't get locked in one node. Thank you, Deepak.
Sanjeev, another question, just trying to amplify what you said. We have seen that yes, we all chase unfortunately the dreams which we even that time also we were thinking that might not be true, right? In fact, there was a research report coming out with a consulting company saying by 2025 India's edtech market would be $25 billion US. Now I'm sitting in 2024. I've added all the revenue of all the startups in India. It has not even touched $2 billion, right? So don't you think we overplayed as an ecosystem? Not just why to blame the founders, but they got infected by the overall euphoria created by everyone.
Yeah, I completely endorse that. Euphoria created by all the VC funds trying to raise valuations, right? And without having fundamentals right in that. So I think, yes, we have overplayed. I don't see it 25 billion happening in a hurry.
True. So now I'll go to Jinesh. Jinesh, we are going to challenging phase, as I'll say that somebody calls it funding winters. When you see from 2020 and 2019 and 2021 types, right? Definitely there is a fall of 60% to 70% depending on which research report you picked up. But at the same time, as Sanjeev pointed out, maybe like in those times, like we were not that cautious. If you have to pick a good founder in current scenario, right? What would be your approach? And do you agree with what Sanjeev said, or do you have a views which are a little bit, I'm saying, right or left of him?
Sure. I think every investor has a different view, right? And I think that's the beauty of investments, right? Look, I think when you look at the data points, right? I mean, you look at high numbers and macro headline numbers, everything depends on one or two or three major lumpy investments which happens out, right? So it depends on it. I mean, are we seeing less number of deals at a fund level? Answer is no. Are there follow-on rounds happening? Answer is yes. Are we getting markups on the follow-on rounds? Answer is yes. Has the metrics changed? I mean, yes, metrics has kept on tweaking, right? Initially, maybe few years ago, it was all about getting growth at any cost. Now people are talking of growth in a sustainable manner, right? So growth still is very much important, right? If people think that if you can make profits and not grow, I think that's not what VCs are betting on, right? VCs by nature are in here to make risk-based returns, right? So we would not shy from taking risk, right? And it's very easy in hindsight to say that this has worked or this has not worked out, right? But VCs, when we are investing, we are crystal gazing what's going to happen 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, what's going to work, what's not going to work. I mean, when you take an estimate, I mean, even for 12 months, I think most of people make blunders, right? So when we make estimate for next 5 or 10 years, we are definitely bound to make mistakes, right? In hindsight, we could all tweak around it. But VCs historically, I mean, in my 17 years as a VC, I mean, we have seen enough burst and boom cycles, right? Every time we make this statement that we were now going to focus only on fundamentals and profits, I think that's a question of time. It's a 1 or 2 years of sanity, and again we're back to it. I mean, the financial sector works on one bubble to the other bubble, and I don't think we are an exception to that, right? Having said that, we keep on learning from our mistakes. What had not worked in the past, we keep working on that. We give feedback to our entrepreneurs, and hopefully things get better, right? At the same time, when industry evolves, the quality of entrepreneur improves, the quality assessment of the investors also gets better. And I think as a collective wisdom, we tend to improve from what we were in the past. So things have been challenging as compared to 2020, 21, 22. I think things look slightly dull, but it's not so bad, right? I mean, it's not bad. I mean, because we had a great 1 or 2 years, today we look the number is small. I mean, there's nothing what one can do, right? I mean, 2 years, 5 years down the line, this number would look like a very tiny, and that number would look very different. And we, the same people on the panel, would have a very different scenarios. So, I mean, I don't think we should worry about this. There is no challenge per se. I mean, are people being cautious? Answer is yes, we are being cautious. But are we going to take less risk and make deals? I mean, answer is no. We continue to do what we are supposed to do. And also, as an institutional investor, I mean, my job is to follow the mandate which I agree with my investors, right? With my investors, if I decide to be an early stage fund investing into agri-tech startups, it's my job to keep doing the same. It's not my job to do a portfolio diversification at my fund level because my LPs can do the diversification at their portfolio level. So that is how we look around it. Look, and if you don't take risks, we're not going to evolve. I mean, why did Israel become or Israeli startups be what they are today, right? Why do Chinese startups scale up faster than Indian startups? Because there are reasons for it. And if we start being too cautious too early in the game, we're going to create a stunted startup ecosystem, right? Everyone who's, I mean, and look like any startup ecosystem, out of all the 100 startups, if they're there, maybe 5 or 7 are going to get funded, right? And then 95 are going to start making noises saying that this is not working out, people are greedy, people are not doing things right. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's okay, right? I mean, in class also, school also, there are 5 guys who are in the top five, remaining 95 are not in the top five, right? And we always used to crave, okay, boss, that guy made, usko teacher ne favor kiya, usko principal ne favor kiya. We used to make those statements. I mean, that remains a human nature. I don't think I'm worried on that. Look, we are here to create disruption. We are here to create winners. To create winners in a span which is smaller than an average time, if you keep doing yourself as an entrepreneur in next 20 years, you could do that. VCs are here to, can we figure that out in 6 or 7 years? Can we do it with more logic? We keep learning, but we want to do it in a faster scale than what we can do otherwise. So there will be some inherent risk what we are taking it. The there is I don't think any VC has reduced the fund size what they're raising. I don't think any LPs have walked away from it, right? I don't think any entrepreneurs have reduced the vision what they have it. We all recognize that things have changed, things are slightly difficult, so we all adapt to that. But in our thoughts, we are all clear where we want to grow, right? I mean, it's like in a COVID year, India as a country slowed down. Does it mean India had the vision to, okay, now we'll stop growing? It was a risky one. I mean, boss, like every person, it's like I always like to say that like every ships are the most safe. It's where they're parked in the shore itself, right? But ships are not made to be kept on the shores. We are here to go in the seas and the ocean, right? We will face tough times, but let's see how it goes. That's how I would put it, I mean.
Excellent. So, Jinesh, I totally agree with you. In fact, like, last 1 month, we did a small exercise. I had a personal discussion with 102 different, VCs and entrepreneurs, right, who have been in the sector. And without telling them, actually, we are trying to, create a questionnaire because people get cautious. It is like, simple chat. I'll call Jinesh and say, hey, Jinesh, what does the market look like? What do you think, founders are doing wrong? Right. We have put it a very anonymous data and we have come out with some of the, myths which will be bursting today. And that would be interesting. And I totally agree with you, the risk capital is required. That's how, Silicon Valley has grown or Israel has grown. 1970s, 80s, they've invested in something when people used to think that these are idiot guys, right? Why they need to do it. But today we know that actually, they're exporting far more technology than the food to the world. Now I would like to go to Shalini. Shalini, you have heard from two very seasoned people about investing in tech startup. Now your mandate has the big I, that is impact, as part of what you do. Do you think this is too much of romanticizing of return of investment and the profitability and the impact is somehow neglect, or how difficult it is to have ROI and impact go hand in hand in a sector like agriculture?
It's like this, at least in my view, that the best businesses are created by founders who are ambitious and who understand business dynamics to ensure that they are building a sustainable enterprise. That's the holy grail. They are difficult to find. They are, amazingly difficult to grow as businesses. What you think might be that at early stage may not evolve to be that. But the holy grail is founders who can build sustainable businesses which grow at fabulous rates. It's always going to be that needle in a haystack. You'll talk to 1,000 to find one which is like that. You will be wrong 9 times out of 10 out of that. And you'll learn from what you got wrong each time and move on. But if you look at the fundamentals, right, we are a population of 140 crores. Still, by estimate, 60 to 70% of our population, which is anywhere between 80 to 100 crores, depends on agriculture. Agriculture is going to drive the economic transformation of our country. Huge businesses will be made in this. We're just at the beginning of it. I mean, I'll take you back to one example in history, and that's not a startup example, but that is a wonderful agri example. If people around the table here recall when BT cotton was introduced into India by Monsanto, there were all kinds of protests against BT cotton. And today, all of the cotton grown in India is BT cotton. And just look at what a wonderful business Monsanto has created out of it. So we will see transformation. We will see transformation with return. If there is actually an improvement in yields, there's a significant reduction in cost, there is a transformational enterprise. And I see so many founders working on some of these ideas. I think I am confident that we will get these transformational businesses out there over a period of time. My personal bet is fully on tech transforming agriculture. And it comes in many ways. It comes in terms of the genetic makeup of the seeds to improve yields. It comes in the form of farm management systems. It comes in the form of satellite imaging. It comes in the form of drones. It comes in the form of using better quality pesticides. All of it has a strong tech element, which either leads to a significant improvement in yield, a significant reduction in cost, or an ease of managing the farm. But I don't see necessarily a compromise always. Some businesses will build in a sustainable manner. There might be compromise, and that's okay. But those will not typically be VC fundable business, and that's fine too. Every business does not need to be a VC business. You can still build a good business without being a VC business, and you can still have good outcomes without having VC money.
I totally agree with you, Shalini, on that. Like, India's SME sector has been very resilient, and majority of that growth has happened without much of VC backing. And all business, as you rightly said, might not be suited for venture capital firms to invest in, but still they'll grow. Now, as you rightly mentioned about the deep tech part of it, I'll go to Shiva. Shiva has been someone who has been always promoting the cause of investing in deep tech and getting it early. Shiva, your views on, like, how do you see investment in tech, which is a game of patience? Like, however, we see not too many companies going all the way. They pivot a lot. But for deep tech level companies, we need people with, like, long rope, where they, as Shalini was also mentioning, the genetics, right? A CRISPR-Cas based solution also is going to at least take 3 years in the lab. Then it goes to field trials, and after 7 years, something is going to come out of it. How do you see this, like, the patience, which I believe not too many VCs have, right, impacting the business?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And good to connect on this, Deepak. But just overall on the market, I would say one different view that I have is slight variation on what Sanjeevji said. Yes, the 2019-2021 patch was one where funding spiked. But if you also look at the corrections and where things have been on the market as a whole, we invest across a range of sectors, and ag has not been one of the ones with as drastic a correction as compared to several other sectors, which I think goes into his point of saying, if you look at this, yes, there may have been some euphoria, some focus on GMV, which caused the focus that you're calling out of, Deepak, of saying people wanted to try so many businesses, just be aggregate, adding to the top line, aggregate, showing what growth could be, and not adding to the fundamentals of the business, which was not true for every startup. I'd say even if you look at the top 15, 20 startups that are there, if you look at how many of them have crossed 100 million in the agri-tech domain as a valuation perspective, several of them have stayed true to a core, said, here's the value, here's what we will do, we will take it on a different path, and have grown their businesses on very focused domains and been able to add value there. So while there were several that have gone down this GMV route, I think what Sanjeevji called out in the start is very true. This has been an area where everyone's expectations have focused around saying, what are you doing to add value? And that will be the critical way that the industry will move forward, deep tech and digital models, both in this space. For the deep tech startups we work with, it's just a slightly different valuation lens we apply. We know realistically, not every segment we can come in as early because of the reasons you also called out, of saying some of these, because it's a certification journey, you have to actually get regulated. Getting a product out to market may mean your product is going out to market in year 7 of the company being incorporated. In which case, the lens we're taking is we still need to exit by a horizon, and our exit doesn't have to be revenue linked. It can be based on the IP value that has been created in those companies by that point of time. So based on the type of innovation the company is doing, is there enough by the time we are looking at our exit horizon to have created that non-linear value from a return perspective we would look for? And that may mean we are investing in year 2 or year 3 of this business that we know has gotten access to good quality facilities, is doing really interesting work, as a very talented team, but still on day 1 of when they are incorporated and start, and most of these boxes being ticked, still has a foundational scientific risk that is true. But once they are able to de-risk this over the 2-3 years they're working on that innovation, we can get comfort saying the part of the scientific risk that was there has been de-risked. There is a question of saying, will this be the right product that is absorbed by the market as the businesses continue to scale? which is just a different competitive environment than a lot of our digital startups play. So there's probably 4 or 5 similar apps that exist, or traditional operators that exist in the agri-tech domain that you're trying to outcompete. Here you're trying to take on a completely different technology profile and beat that from true value delivered to the customers, be it on the way that your biostimulant works, the way that you're actually being able to deliver on carbon capture. You're mostly being compared to a different technology platform that's being able to deliver on these goals. So with that being the lens, it's just a different risk profile we are coming in with. And yeah, we're just respectful of that being a core part of how we need to engage with those startups.
No, so sure, a follow-up question to you, when we talk about the deep tech, right, you talked about bio, you talked about like digital science, you talked about genetics. There has always been challenge of identifying good startup because such a negativity has been created, right, by the existing players in agri businesses, right? There are those who want to milk the last molecule, right, which they have created long back, maybe a decade back. They would always like to discount on bio doesn't work or genetic is too dangerous. So old school people would create a lot of negativity so that these startups get discouraged or type of support they need from the ecosystem, even the regulatory aspect of it, right? Our government has been good enough for CRISPR-Cas, at least SDN 1 and 2. They have said it's not GMO. So not two governments are progressive. So how do you find such startups, right, which are investable, right, with so much of negativity around this deep tech currently in India?
So I don't think there's negativity around deep tech in aggregate, Deepak. I think there's pockets that there is an understanding, as you called out, from the regulatory perspective as well in India, of saying this needs to happen. These are areas that we need to move on. And fundamentally, I think as you look globally as well, there's an understanding that, and again, it varies based on region and pockets, but there's an understanding saying business as usual, not just for agri, but I think for all of our industries as they stand today, does not work. And we do need to fundamentally rethink our industries because something is going to hit very drastically on how climate change will affect all of these businesses that they operate going forward. And you need to start looking at what are the alternate solutions around. And deep tech is a more likely reinvention and area where those reinventions will come. So if that is the case, it's about saying we don't want to always be fighting this battle in a way that we're hoping that you get regulators to change their mind, industry to change their mind, everyone to actually flip. But you look at saying, is this an area where it is likely that the industry bodies and the large enough corporates will say, this is a technology platform I want to bet on because this, over the 20-year growth projection, I can expect some value to be created here. And inevitably for us, these technologies have to deliver on a global scale because India, for some of the limiting factors that are there, just does not have the market depth in each individual domain that we're talking about. So you're saying this needs to be a best-in-class technology. Identifying them, I think, is less of a challenge because we probably don't have the same depth that you have in a US or some of these other developed markets where you can get multi-million-dollar grants for these things upfront. But there is a general pool of where you can say, here's where you would be able to get 50, 70 lakh, 1 crore through grants in India. Here's where you'd be able to get access to the same quality facilities that you'd be looking at. So most of these will not be labs that you have bought and custom equipment you have bought, but you've gone into a lab sitting at IIT Kanpur, a lab sitting in IIT Bombay, IISc, saying this is the best lab for this thing in the country. I've gotten an additional grant to do specific research I need to here. You spent years getting that product initially right, and you're building on that from how you need to actually get it to commercialize. So I think there's a business question about how these businesses and the teams get allocated. But yeah, from identifying those startups, I think the domains, because you're saying you're looking at these best-in-class facilities that exist across the country and looking at them specifically for where they are best-in-class, being able to identify our pipeline is a bit more of a focused exercise. And it just needs us to also have a mix of skill sets by which we are evaluating. So I continue to evaluate all of them from a business model perspective, but we also have PhDs and researchers from our core parts of our team that are actually looking in on, for this technology platform, is this the most cutting edge solution that can come in? And is it globally the best in class?
In fact, you'll be surprised. You rightly mentioned, it's still 2 decades back. If you pick up any CGI institute today, they're 80% of the top leadership in research would be Indians. The ICR and Indian agricultural research institutions were talk of the town. But unfortunately, past 20 years, we have struggled in putting that level of emphasis on research and development, which I believe is one of the challenge where having good crop of deep tech, pure agronomically inclined companies are not coming up. And now I'll go to Abhishek ji. So Dr. Abhishek, you have been someone who has been trying to nurture those startups in initial phase, right? In initial 1 year, 1.5 years, when they look for grants, when they look for support, when they look for hand holding, so that they become good enough to be seen by Shiva or Jinesh. Sir, your views on having worked on incubation in the rural structure setup, and how do you handle and what are the challenges you have been facing?
Yeah, thanks, Deepak ji. I think I give you some background of what we do. So we started incubation in 2017 as India's first women-centric business incubator, and probably it is the largest as of now. We have supported 150 plus women startups all across India. Out of these, 76 have raised more than 20 million in funding and registered some 60 IPs, created more than 2,000 jobs. And we focus a lot on translational research also, right? I think when I look back, more than 70-80% of our founders come from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, right? And we have supported some, I think, 15 plus startups in the agriculture domain also. Agriculture on the face of it looks very easy, that you have so many challenges, so many problems. But I think the problems are different, the solutions need to be different. And, it takes a lot of other things to make a product sustainable in terms of rural markets. I think, you have to live their life. You have to understand what are the existing solutions they have, the alternates they have, how are they solving the problem right now, and whether they are able to pay for it or not. I think we have many startups in the agriculture domain who are not able to move ahead in terms of what they were offering, and they have to pivot, face a lot of challenges, wasted a lot of time, money, and resources. And finally, they have to pivot to do something else. It's not easy to scale in the agriculture space. I think we have more people here, specialists in terms of agriculture funding. But I think that's what largely our experience is. We have a couple of startups, I would like to quote them. I think as far as technology is based in Bombay, and they started with developing a solar power dehydrator for converting the farm excess produce into dehydrated products. So they started offering the machine, which is the invented, I mean, which had the patent they had, and they started selling the machine to the farmers. But they soon realized there was no market because farmers were not ready to pay for it, and they finally had to shift to procuring the dehydrated produce from the farmers and selling it to FMCG companies. It's a more than 100 crore revenue startup now, have grown exceptionally well. But I think they had to pivot from what they started with as a problem, which certainly is a big problem in the market. But then they had to pivot. So I think as part of the incubation center, we have to be very critical in terms of offering the right business insights to the startups. And most of our work goes into curating the business model, because that's where we feel that if the business model is correct, the other things will certainly fall in line. But if the model is not, if there is a problem in the model overall, how much money you put into the business will not grow. So a lot of our effort goes into building curating the business model and creating a marketing and distribution model. I think a lot of our startups in the agriculture domain have struggled because of the wrong business model. They were not able to collect the right feedback from the market. They were not able to understand the problem better. And similarly, because of these two things, the solution was not what the customer was looking at. So finally, they have to shut down businesses even after getting good funds from the market. I think so. That's my take there. I think largely the other thing which we also do as part of the incubation center, deep tech is somewhere we work very closely, because a lot of our startups come from the science and technology background. That's where the larger focus is. So a lot of our work goes into understanding the deep tech, although it's very challenging, very time-taking, takes a lot of efforts in terms of understanding what the problem is, then supporting the startup till the level the product goes to the market. But again, I think our focus largely is to provide them the right mentoring. In terms of whatever they are doing, they should cut down the time because of some mentor who can guide them in the right space and the right guidance, so that they can cut down the time overall in making the mistakes which the mentor might have already done earlier, right? So that work we do. So I think largely the focus of the incubation center is one, obviously, in terms of building the business model. Second, the mentoring, which we feel is one of the most important pillars in a startup success, because you can avoid a lot of mistakes that the mentors or the other people in this industry have done because of their experience in the industry. These are the two things which we largely focus upon. The third very important pillar of an incubation center is the network, which we also provide in terms of opening doors for them for the government business or for the corporates. That's also we put a lot of focus upon, because we feel that if you provide the right network to the startups at an early stage, the chances for them becoming successful, or the chances of pivoting, chances of testing the product in the right industry or the right market would increase, which will help them with the right set of learnings. So I think these three things which we largely focus upon.
Excellent, Dr. Abhishek. Very well articulated the role of incubator. Now, Ashdeep, to you, like, you have been both an investor as well as university company, right? Working on AgTech. Based on all the discussion, like, what are your views on how you do see opportunities, right, evolving in the sector, which you are like, you have been into biotech, you have been into digital tech. So you have been doing all those deep tech work. Now, how do you see going forward the opportunities, both as a company which is actually involved in themselves operations as well as an investee in some of the startups?
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to answer the question, yes, as both the perspectives of being an investing company and as an investor as well. I think one, as an investing company, I think one thing I would like to mention is having a little extra cash helps. It helps the founders to take risk. It helps the founder to actually see, end of the day, this is a business of risk. The more risk you take, the better the return you give. And that little bit, so as absolute, because we had the chance or the fortune of actually raising a larger capital round, gave us the ability to take a little more risk, which actually helps us in building the business, which is more robust, more stronger, and has, all the angles covered when you're looking to build the business. So that is one part, right? And then what it allows is that it allows us to actually ensure that, the learnings are quickly taken up, unlike maybe startups wherein a typical funding will happen like, 500,000, then $2 million, or maybe 2 crores, and then, the $1 million and $5 million. So what happens is, with every step of proof which the investor has to, or the investing company has to give, they actually lose a lot of time in trying to prove every step, whom they are, why they are there, why they should get capital. There is a whole set of justification which happens, and that possibly delays the entire thing, which also impacts the returns, right? So you're looking at returns to come in 3 years. You want the startup to become a multi-bagger in 3 years, but the money doesn't flow. For every 10 million, if you want a billion, you need to put in 10 million immediately. You can't have the 10 million going in the third year and then expect it. So that's one part of it. The second part is, as an investing company. So see, we have been operating in the agriculture space, of course, various segments of it. What we today see is a lot of investments we have done are broadly coming from two segments, which is something which people can look at, maybe, the incubators as well as the early investors. One, a lot of investments are coming because they are starved of next round of funding. They have done the kind of growth they could have done on the capital they got, but they are not able to get the next round of capital simply because the existing backers cannot provide that capital, right? So if you have a company which has raised $10 million and next round you want to raise $25 million, then there are very few people who can give that $25 million. So this company which has got $10 million will struggle and will continue to kind of flounder at the same level till it, is kind of absorbed in another strategic or somewhere else. That's one. So that's the kind of deals which are currently there. I don't call it funding winter. I think it's a structural gap in the market which exists. That's one. The second is basically ideas which are very unique ideas, which these such unique ideas coming to us, and we feel them in our business line, and having evaluated various companies, some of these unique ideas are good and they are, worth investing. So, and as a corporate, we see these as investment and not as, not a business we should be taking. So, I mean, so overall, we have done 5 investments so far, and I think these are simply just because, we figured out nobody else was doing it. and these are good things to do.
So now next question to you only, like, how do you look at these startups? Because VCs and all that, they have their own big capabilities based on their experiences, the team they're having. How difficult or easy it is for a startup like you, right, which is actually reinvesting to identify it's a startup and then do the due diligence part of it, or you piggyback on some other VCs which already have been investing in those companies?
I don't think we really filter out whether it is an invested company or not an invested company. It's a question of business model which continues to be strong and continues to grow. So, it's a pure merit, right? It's a pure merit. It's not about who had it first or whether he got an investor, didn't get an investor, didn't make a difference.
So what is the return do you generally look at? 5x, 10x? Do you have something in mind, or you?
No, we are building businesses.
Go with the flow.
And we feel that when we basically fund a startup, for example, we feel that the capital raise should not be their job. So even if we start at 25% capital, we ensure that if they need capital tomorrow, we will arrange for you or we'll put in the own money.
Super excellent. I'll go back to you again, Sanjeev. So Sanjeev, one very important aspect when we discuss, startup in India has been a challenge of the corporate governance, right? We have already seen some litigation happening with a couple of startups where, there have been very clear violation of rule of the land. How do you see, the investors looking at this aspect, where actually, and I believe me, if I have to pick up at least 8 to 10% of all the startup in India, they are doing something which I would say that it is on the border of being not legally right. I'm not even going on the ethics part of it. Whether it is to create more GMVs through changing just bills, right? Those type of things are happening, and investors are aware about it. How do you see this corporate governance issue taken care by the the investors when they see a startup?
Great, thank you. So let me look at corporate governance. So I spent about 40 years in ITC. So would I say that from day one we had a perfect corporate governance? No, I think we have evolved over a period of time. But definitely one rule is there that we don't try and break the law. Okay, that is all statutory compliances, etc., need to be definitely met. So are there issues happening right now, whether it is AgTech, etc.? Yes, there are. Some could be consciously done, some could be unconscious. So as an investor, when I'm putting money behind founders, is my responsibility, the question I'm asking myself, is my responsibility to give money behind the idea and tell them to run? Or do I have a larger responsibility to help them and guide them, much like I would do with other people? So there are two types of founders that we get. There are founders who come with 5 to 10 years of experience, and founders who are really raw, right out of the college, and they have some brilliant idea. So I think the perspective for both of these changed significantly. With people who come in with experience, you don't need to tell them that they need to weave in 3-4 aspects, and you need to weave in HR, finance, all these governance, etc. into it. They build it from the beginning itself. People who are brand new believe that they can do everything on their own. So that is where I think we need to play a role along with them and guide them as they do it. And I find when I evaluate founders in India versus in the Silicon Valley, there I find that the founders are pretty much, they accept the fact that I'm good in tech. You can get me a CEO who will perhaps run the business and do the day-to-day because he or she may perhaps do it better than me. But in the Indian ecosystem, I find an overhang that where the founder believes he or she can do everything. हम finance भी कर लेंगे, हम HR भी कर लेंगे. So they believe that they can do everything. So perhaps that is where I think we need to play a role in perhaps guiding them. Because at the end of the day, it is reputational risk for all of us. So if I'm with a fund, whether Jinesh is with one, or whether you have Shiva, we all have a reputation at risk. So if one of our investee companies does or violates law, it impacts us. Means that we have not been a bit more careful in monitoring that. So to that extent, I'm saying, if I find that the value system of the entire set of people does not align with my with the organization, then even if the idea is brilliant, I normally walk out. And I know I've had conversations with Mr. Gopal Srinivasan of TVS when he said, look, I know they were a multi-bagger, but I find issues. So I think he and I both decided to walk out of that. So that's a matter of what value systems you ascribe to. So it's also important to understand, I think several of us in this panel have a fair understanding, but at times when our people in our organization are evaluating initial deals, they may not even have a complete understanding. So I think the responsibility lies on all of us as seniors, as the investors, to guide and perhaps navigate all our investee companies out of these choppy waters and ensure. So I believe that if we have issues there, means we have not insisted. At the times, you cannot run away from the ownership of there being corporate governance lapses. So I think we have a larger role to play. I find some people don't. Some people give the money and say you run the way you want to. But I belong to perhaps a slightly older generation where I say, no, I'm sorry, you will have to do A, B, C, D. You'll have to get your org chart appropriately done so that all aspects are taken care of. You may not understand the importance of that right now, but in the long run, it'll all pay back. Otherwise, you'll be spending far more time in correcting than preventing. Back to you, Deepak.
No, I totally agree. That's why you find that some of the very highly reputed VC firms globally, they have distanced themselves from Indian and Chinese market by having spin-offs, right? They're actually demerged those entities who are working in India, because few of their investee companies, not in tech, but in other sector, has done something which is not great to be talking about. A follow-up question to you. This is because an area of interest to you, Sanjeev, the digitization, right?
Yep.
We talk so much of digitization, right? It can impact the sector in a substantial manner. But of late, past 10 to 12 years, we have seen that that impact has been limited because of various reasons. And one reason I always love when you say that, look at one region. Don't just look at I want to conquer whole of India, right? You'll be good enough even if you are able to have impact in one district or one taluka or even one state. Your views on that? Has the digitization really given value or impact on the ground, which it has potential for?
Digitization definitely has, but has it had an impact at scale? I don't think so. So to me, any initiative, even digitization, should have a few, 3 or 4 key outcomes. It should increase productivity or yield. It should improve quality. It should reduce cost or have some impact on a time scale, reduce delivery time or something. So if it does not impact these 4, then obviously digitization is not having an impact. And to me, the other thing which I consider very important in that is that, is it at the end of the day impacting my farmer? Is my farmer becoming more profitable? So it's a huge issue for me that in this entire value chain, all of us are out to help people make money, help our founders make money, guide them on their ideas. But how often do we evaluate that? Is the core central figure of the entire ecosystem, the farmer, is he making money? So my belief is that unless he or she makes money, the entire ecosystem is faulty. So digitization, there are lots of organizations. There is WeGrow, there is Bharat Agri, there's CropIn, SatSure. I think Shalini talked about using satellite imagery, right? But are these organizations making money right now or digitize? They have been able to solve some problems, but have they been able to solve comprehensively? I don't know. So I belong to the school where I believe that you have to take value chain by value chain. And I think that's a very oft quoted example. You don't play sports, you play either football or cricket. So you don't play agriculture, you play either a value chain of chili or you play a value chain. There's completely different value chains, completely different games. So you will need to value it. So anyone who says that I'm going to master 5 or 6 or 10 of these value chains, I normally take it with a pinch of salt. Very, very difficult unless you're doing pure trading. Even trading requires, even if you go down to a trader, he or she will understand one commodity or 2 commodities extremely well. But overall, I am a big proponent that digitization in agriculture is only 14 to 15%. We have seen what UPI Aadhaar has done to the financial world. And that is why I work in this not-for-profit Section 8 company. I'm a co-founder in this, called the Agri Collaboratory. We believe, our hypothesis, that digitization will unleash a lot of innovation in this area. And so we are going to talk about it in the next few months, and we're going to launch what is called the Agri Digital Index, etc., as we go forward. So it has not had an impact at scale, but definitely in small pockets it has. But what we are looking at is 150 million hectares of India and millions more across the world. What are those technologies which can perhaps make a big difference? It is only digitization. I believe that will bring impact at scale. Back to you.
Perfect. Jinesh, question to you. You have been in this field for a pretty long time, and LPs are most critical part of this ecosystem, right? Their love for the sector, or when they start becoming disenchanted with the sector, plays heavily on when actually the actual investments happen. In your view, past 10 years or so, right? Have you seen the LPs and their mindset changing, new type of investors coming in, old type people taking a back seat? How that LP part of the game has evolved?
Well, thanks, Deepa, for this. Yeah. Look, so I would break the LPs into two kind of LPs, right? One is domestically as well as internationally. And if you take the other piece of it, it's institutional versus family offices, right? So if you take a look at the domestic LPs, Indian LPs as an ecosystem in India, LP ecosystem is like 10, 15 years old, right? Which should be starting from the upfront, right? And family office in the last few years have started doing things, right? Banks made investments as LPs over a period of time, and some insurance companies, right? For Indian LPs, 10 years is a very long fund, right? Unfortunately, in agriculture, 10 years is not a long term, right? If I were to bring one variety of seed, it's a 7 to 8 years of journey, right? If I were to bring one crop protection molecule, it's another 7, 8 years of journey. Doing market study, it takes time, right? So Indian LPs, if you are just focused only on returns and say, I want to make an IRR, and they'll look at the markets, okay, I can make money in real estate, I can make money in stock markets, public markets at less risk, and they go with that, right? International LPs have seen this cycle, saying that they look at their LP pool across various portfolio diversification. They think agri is one of the areas where they want to do as a diversification. So they would tend to be okay to make investment in this kind of fund, because this is where it takes longer time, right? But if you take agri, because from international LP perspective, agriculture sector might not be the most euphoric sector, but it's also a sector of necessities, right? So it also doesn't go down, right? All tech investments and everything has its own ups and downs, right? Agri-tech sustains itself. Even in the worst of times, we still have delivered, right? Agri-tech has been able to get M&A exits at mid-markets, even in the worst of times, right? Because agri businesses are by nature profitable, right? But they might not be as euphoric as what you see in tech VCs. So institutional international LPs continue to remain focused around it. They in fact have become more patient around it. They think that it has a potential to deliver not only single bottom line in terms of return, but also can create an impact, and also hopefully create a positive impact on the climate, which is a big problem, right? Which sometimes the individual or the Indian institutional investors don't bother too much about it. Right. So international institutional investors are focused on all these aspects. They are very keen to look at those aspects. Indian institutional investors are graduating, they're learning from their global peers, and they started to talk about all these right terms and terminologies. Family offices in Europe and US have impact as a clear focus. They believe a part of their wealth should be contributed towards making an impact. And impact is beyond philanthropy, right? So they would like to make investments which are sustainable and have positive impact on life of people who don't have so much of money. So that's how they look around it. Well, Indian HNI families is of late, they have started talking of impact. The IIC, which is the Indian Impact Council, has been doing a good job of creating the education for the Indian family offices, and we are starting to see those things. But it's tough from Indian LPs to look at a fund which is requiring more patient capital, has impact metrics. And when people look at returns, they need to look both not only financial returns, but also as other positive returns you're doing to the society. So that's what people look, right? Indian LPs also feel that agriculture is not a glamorous sector, which is absolutely true, right? It's a dirty business, right? Literally dirty, right? Right from shit to all what you can get is actually part of the business, right? Uh, so it's very, for them, it's very interesting to talk about it, but they want to put a large chunk of capital. It's difficult for them to put in. But overall, I think we are seeing that the impact ecosystem, institutional investors, global investors are now looking more and more at the smallholder farm ecosystem problems, right? And that is what is seeing around it. It's unfortunate we are seeing more of international capital coming into Indian ag sector than the domestic capital. That's where it is, right? And GPs will follow the way where you can path of least resistance. So that's where it is, right? There's no dearth of capital. Indian institutional capital is available to some extent, but international capital is much easier than what you could get in India. I mean, that's what I'll put in.
No, I think that is also one of the reason. If you see A, B, C, D, E, F, G of agriculture, right? The large companies, India being the biggest consumer, one of the largest producer, majority of the right, commodities. Still in top 5 or top 6, you don't find an Indian company, right? That's for decades that's been happening. I think that is
I think that is getting changed, right? We have UPS
yes.
of the world, Mahindras of the world, your Jain irrigations of the world. I mean, we are starting to create an impact, right? India probably is late to the party, but I think it's just a matter of time. We will see that. In fact, we will also see few of the existing startups, which also will become large enterprises on its own in next few years, right? So we will see those things happening around it. Right now, very few people are willing to talk about the startups and everything because there's so much of noise around things. The startups are not profitable, startups make losses. I mean, and you look at the agri-entrepreneurs discussion, it's the same thing, right? Everyone's looking and everyone's trying to preach to investors, okay, what is to be done, right? I mean, no one talks about what the others are doing it. But I think, look, at some point, the startups will deliver. I mean, you need to be very patient around it. The tech investment VC ecosystem took nearly 15 years to get the first unicorn, right? I mean, agri-tech VC ecosystem is a decade-old system. I mean, you want us to deliver at much faster pace, at much better returns than other tech VCs in spite of the fact that this sector is more difficult than a tech VC start ecosystem, right? So, but I think in a few years, things will deliver. We have seen across few portfolio companies where you made products for Indian market, but you are able to sell globally, and those products do sell across the globe. I mean, some exits have started happening to global institutions or global strategic players. In a matter of time, you will see a couple of IPOs happening in next 3 to 4 years, right? I mean, once you have that story coming in, then everything will have a different discussion. I mean, there is so much of noise, even for LPs and even for entrepreneurs, that people don't realize what is right, what is wrong, or what is good or bad. But we go with the flow, right? But smart LPs, people who understand business, understand agri as an asset class, continue to make investments because it creates a positive income at the same time solves the climate problem. That's what I would put in.
So one more question to you, Jinesh. Like you talked about the VCs and LPs, like or GPs looking at smallholder problems. And smallholder problem is just not the phenomenon of India. Like it is across Southeast Asia as well as Africa. Your views on that? Can Indian VCs would also be open or looking, because I think you are already doing that, right? Investing in some of the market like Indonesia, Vietnam, or for that matter, Tanzania or Uganda. Your
So
views on that?
look, Omnivore has started investing internationally. We have started doing Southeast Asia as a market. Hopefully, we'll make an announcement soon on the same. Uh, but yeah, I mean, there is a huge learning from the Indian ecosystem, what VCs have gone through it, what entrepreneurs have gone through it. We have also seen a lot of Indian professionals who are part of startups in India are being co-founders into countries or into startups of countries which are having international exposure. And their learnings about their India experience is helping those startups to avoid those mistakes. So I think it's just a matter of time it's going to happen. And look, we have at least started exploring going international markets, uh, slow and small steps, but hopefully, yes, this is a journey for which will begin, right? But yeah, I mean, we will see funds looking at global and regional investments rather than country-specific investment. That's my senses.
I totally agree with you because I at least I travel twice every year to Southeast Asia just for the learning. Even there are a lot of learning for Indian startup ecosystem also from these countries, specifically Indonesia and Vietnam. The type of effort they have done and being successful around that. Going to you, Shalini, we talked about technology, but there is a lot of people saying that technology in agriculture will take away a lot of jobs, right? It will take away a lot of work which the farmers are doing. So being someone who is being focused on impact where the livelihood becomes a very critical part of it, how do you see the more investment in technology eventually leading, and we all know it will lead to some attrition in those required to be on farm. What we do with their livelihood? Any views on that?
So this is a difficult one, right? Because when you talk to a farmer, one of his most significant pain points today is availability of labor at peak times, which is sowing time and harvest time, right? That's one. Two, I think the natural order of an economy is to move towards industrialization and towards a service economy. So I think what we do is, one, there are parts of solutions that we invest in which don't remove labor. So yield enhancement techniques or input cost reduction, better quality of input, both of those don't impact labor, but we actually also would love to support a lot of mechanization for the simple reason that we believe that alternate income streams and businesses will get created along the way. And it's a little less understood now, but we believe that that's the direction it will move in, where we will see these significant businesses evolve over a period of time. So I spoke of, drones, and drone being one of the technologies which will change some parts of how agriculture is done in India. One of the things that will happen is that there will be entire economies created around, because it makes no sense for somebody to own, each farmer to own a drone, especially with the Indian landholding sizes. So there will be a village entrepreneur who will be typically a slightly more educated person, who will, instead of moving to a city, get trained in operating these drones and stay in the village and create an income stream for himself. There will be people who will work with farmers on advisory around crop management systems or implementation of, let's say, micro irrigation is the simplest of it, but all of the other steps which are required for agriculture. There will be businesses which will remove the burden of manual labor in sowing paddy, which is back-breaking because most of it is still done by hand. And all of it has its own positive income, health, long-term livelihood impacts. There will be other transformational things which will get created out of adjacent income streams. So for example, India, most cattle is still owned by individual farmers, right? And one of the most fabulous things India did was propagated by Amul, which actually created this cooperative ecosystem where the individual farmer owns cattle and sells milk, and that's got replicated across. That will continue to be there, but an yield improvement in the milk output, and India has the highest number of cattle in the world, but probably the lowest or close to the lowest yield per cattle head. Just think of additional income streams getting created out of that. So I don't think that it is really, one needs to look at it as an either or. I think there will be some cannibalization, but it will get replaced with additional income streams. And one can never stop the progress of technology and transformation if there is a value add. So if you need human labor at 400 rupees, per day, and you can do a mechanized task at 200 rupees a day without the reliability issues, This same argument happened in industry. This same argument happened against, when trains first started and so on and so forth. You cannot stop progress. You need to accept the fact that some businesses will get outdated. They will be replaced with new businesses. And that hopefully, as it has been in the past, those businesses will actually lead to a higher per capita income in the villages and some level of additional urbanization, industrialization. It's a transformation of an economy that we are going through.
Perfect. Very well articulated, and I love your example on dairy industry because I have worked extensively on that. And in fact, you'll be surprised, the love our cattle farmers they have for the cattle is phenomenal. If you tell them कि आप cattle farmer है बोले नहीं मैं गौ पालक हूँ, right? So this is the love and affection they have for their cattle. This can go both ways, right? Sometimes it can they cannot be as inhuman as some of those, right? The dairy advanced dairy countries in the world, which see cattle just as something to give milk and eventually meat. Indian farmer doesn't think that way. Question to you, Shiva, very simply put, what trait you see in the funding founder today, right? In current scenario, what are the 3 or 4 things you would look at a founder before writing a check to him?
So from our side, Deepak, I think one of the most important things we've seen that that we push founders on right now is you understand the value chains and the ecosystems you're on. I think Janesh and Sanjeev, Shalini have all kind of alluded to this. It's a question of saying, for the segments you're in, it's not that you're at a stage in this ecosystem that nothing has been tried from an agri-tech domain. So have you taken the lessons from what has been tried from startups in this space, from the traditional operators in the space before? Do you know what you're actually building towards? Specifically from a deep tech lens, what we also have as a additional filter that we come in with is, of course, the technology needs to be best in class, and you're looking to build something that will be globally be able to stand out. But you're also looking for someone who understands what the long-term business model therein is. So you may be working on this very new compound, but you know what it will take to go to market. Is it a product that you're looking at that the way you're doing your research would be a platform technology that you will license out a range of different products to different companies for different use cases? Or is this a core product that you're building that for the domain you're in, you actually will be getting into specialized manufacturing, have a high kind of gross margin need to generate that? So the understanding of the underlying business you're in, which goes back to what they're all called out as well, is saying understanding the business fundamentals you're building towards and saying, what I need to complement for myself to get that team built out so that long-term we're able to deliver on those aspirations. That as we are a team that is considerably larger, a company that has gone on and raised 50, 100 times of whatever the initial rounds that you've gone and raised, you understand how the business model needs to evolve. So for us, having clarity that this is what you're trying to build towards is critical for us to work with any founder. So we push them fairly heavily on a lot of these domains and saying, do we have a nuanced idea? And what we look forward to is actually founders who say, this is what I've understood of this space. Here's what I've engaged with based on other stakeholders, other partners, other potential customers I've spoken to. And here's how I'm piecing together what seems to be the right answer. And then it's a dynamic co-creation process. And the founder will always be leading this. But it then means it's someone you can really deeply engage with to say, here's additional ideas. How can we actually work through? Here's other what are some of the lessons going through, as you've called out, from other regions? And what does that mean for how this business model could evolve? So it just lends itself to a much more dynamic process where you're able to plug in and add value from the other partners that we have also worked with in these domains.
Perfect, very well articulated. Maybe we might soon have a AI engine to help VCs, right? Where you just just chat GPT, you say that this is what I need from a startup, and zoom, you'll get all the list of the startup you can invest with, pros and cons. Going to you, Dr. Abhishek, I would like to have a perspective on women entrepreneurship from you. I think agriculture, you'll be surprised to know that majority of, in fact, 80% of the labor being put on farms are women. Unfortunately, we don't see too many of women entrepreneurs when it comes to agriculture. Or even I'm saying that generally coming from the rural area, and we have been nurturing them. Your views on that, what women entrepreneurs bring on table, how they are better than their male counterpart in case they are, and what are their challenges?
Yeah, thanks. I think That's one of the best questions. I would be happy to answer. I think I would talk about the challenges first, right? A lot of people ask us that why you need a separate space for women entrepreneurs. What's different with a woman entrepreneur than a male entrepreneur? What do you do differently with them? So I think we simply say that we don't do different things, but we do things differently. Why? Because women entrepreneurs bring different challenges. Why different challenges? A couple of them. First is the societal barrier. They are always being told that this is not something for you. So they are raised on those societal barriers that something which is which needs aggression, something which needs adventure, something which has excitement in it is not for them. That's the first thing. The second thing is they lack networks, right? Say because of that inherent feeling of fear or security or society, they are not able to build their networks. The third challenge which we have seen is the lack of confidence that I can do something bigger. I can scale. I can have worldview of things. The fourth challenge, which we have also seen in them, is the lack of vision in terms of building something bigger for life, right? So these are a couple of things which we have seen in terms of the challenges of women entrepreneurs, and along with that, the other challenge is family responsibility, certainly, because a lot of women entrepreneurs, they start after a sabbatical, and we have seen that they have young kids. The family is at the background. They have guilt that if I'm leaving the family, am I doing something right or wrong? So these are some societal challenges or the challenges which come of being a woman. Now, I think coming on to the question, which certainly is that what they bring onto the table. I think we have supported. We have personally worked with more than 200 founders till now. As part of the formal incubation programs, we have supported more than 150, and out of those 150, our success rate for more than 2 years is more than 80%. In fact, this we have done a few days back. Only this exercise of how many founders we have supported have been able to be sustainable for more than 2 years. It's more than 80%, which is phenomenal, I guess. I think considering the kind of numbers we see, that how many startups they sustain after a year or so. But the other challenge here is most of them are not able to grow or scale at the speed at which the startup need to scale. So that kind of gestation period of starting a venture to taking a venture to a sustainable, respectable level is slightly slower in terms of being women entrepreneurs because of these couple of challenges which I talked about. I think the other good thing which they bring is a lot of integrity, a lot of ethics in terms of doing businesses. I think out of the 150 we have supported, we have never faced any challenge in terms of corporate governance issues or integrity issues or issues with respect to honesty or ethics. So that's, I think, a very good, outcome of being a woman entrepreneur. Whatever they do sustainably. They do it for a long-term purpose, and they always have sustainability from the starting. So it's not like you burn money for a couple of years, then you suddenly realize, no, I have to become sustainable. I have to show profits or so. I think they from day one onwards, they think of inclusivity, they think of society, they think of their employees, and they think of profits also, which is sometimes becomes a challenge in terms of scalability. But I think as far as the business is doing good, they are able to create a couple of jobs. They're profitable also, and they're becoming self-sustainable and independent. I think we don't mind such enterprises, because as a country, we all know that we are a country of MSMEs. 90% of our enterprises are MSMEs. So the larger the number we have, the better it is, because that's you have more sustainable enterprises, you have more enterprises which create a lot of jobs, and more enterprises which solve local problems locally, right? So I think that's what they bring. Yeah.
No, perfectly well articulated, because I also strongly believe that women have far more, let's say that box ticked when it comes to agriculture, and we need more of them. Shalini, would you like to also be the only woman panelist, any views on these?
This is a long, deep topic, very close to my heart. But I think I'd only say that I love every single positive reinforcement to allow women to do better in all fields of life. There has been so much discrimination, and capability of women has been underrated, misunderstood for so long, and they can bring so many different perspectives to it, right? We don't, being an impact fund, we actually don't apply a gender lens while investing. With that, I think about 40% of our businesses that we've invested in have women founders. And I love each and every one of them. I mean, they're just amazing.
Now, I would suggest you should definitely look at the Vanasti Vidyapit if you already don't know about them. They have been doing a fabulous work, and specifically in women entrepreneurship. Uh, and I always strongly believe that, like, if you give money in hand of a male agriculturist, could be farmer or could be agribusiness, his family will make like life will improve. If you give it to a woman, whether a farmer or agribusiness professional in a rural area, the whole community start getting value. And I've seen that happening in, like, Orissa. I've seen that happening in Madhya Pradesh, in Gujarat, where women entrepreneurs, like, you just fund them for 20 cattle, and suddenly you find after 2 years, like, they're having 10 more peers who have started doing the same type of work. So that's the beauty of, like, women in agriculture, and all salute to them. Last question to you, Ashdeep. Like, it's very interesting conversation which we have, and your thoughts on, like, is it all about ROI or strategic alignment you think about going forward? And in case, like, when you invest in some of the other initiative, could be SMEs or could be startups. I won't just put it only startups, right? What are the key areas, right? What a founder should be having, so that in case they want to get funded from you, they should have a deck which covers all of those points.
Thanks, Deepak. It's a question.
And I won't charge any, like, finders fees. Don't worry.
I'm saying this question should be to the wider panel, not just to me. But as a, let me put it, like, as a corporate VC, what we are looking at is basically, what are you trying to do differently than what has already been done. That's one. That's on the idea per se. Second is, what is your route to market? Will you be able to scale or not? Right? That's important. A lot of people have a good idea, don't have a visibility on the scale. So sometimes we are able to bridge that gap. So if they have the first, we can help the second. Sometimes they have the second, but they don't have the tech, but they want to do it. So we can help and do it. So we basically come in like a partner, right? You don't have a co-founder, think of us as a co-founder, and basically we'll work with you. Third is, in terms of the team, right? What kind of team it is there? What kind of passion which is there? Are you looking for a job and just because you just happen to create a startup and you use it as a tool to get a job? Right? That's not something which kind of work. It basically, you should have that ability to sustain independently, have a knack to solve a problem, will help on the scale up, or have a knack to get to the scale and will solve the problem. I think these are the broad factors. Capital is usually not the criteria per se for looking at it. Of course, at the end of it, there should be a multi-bagger getting created without any specific ROI attached to it.
Fair enough. As we have some time, so I'll definitely, like, go with your request. Ask Dinesh also. Dinesh, somebody has to send the deck. Like, what would be few things you would like that deck to at least have, or to excuse and save your time?
No, I think simple is that what is a genuine problem you're trying to say? Like, we have the problem, we have the philosophy of 3Ts, right? I mean, what is the team, what we are talking about it? What is the TAM in terms of what's the addressable market you're talking about it? What is the traction you have received it? And what is the technology you're using it, right? Whether it's a technology-led startup or a tech-enabled startup, what are you doing this, right? Based on these 4 parameters, we decide whether we invest or not, right? I mean, we just keep it very simple.
Perfect. Sanjeev, you also would like to give a shot to this in case somebody wants you to, like, write a check. What at least you'll see?
So I fundamentally, basically, when I look at a deck, I am trying to understand in the first few slides itself, what are the use cases? what is the before and after? So if the person has been able to visualize his or her solution and the problem very well, I think a use case brought out in the first few slides, like the before and after, perhaps illustrates the beauty of the solution extremely well. So to me, if the founder is able to do that, means he's able to visualize and present that. Otherwise, it can at times, big long decks can hide a lot. But to me, that is what I focus upon. And when people come to me to help them make their decks, that is what I fundamentally focus on.
No, I totally agree with you, Jinesh, Ashudeep, Shalini, Dr. Abhishek, and Shiva. I also come across at least 8 or 9 good deck on a weekly basis, right? But for me, the more of the time, request is, can you become a co-founder? And believe me, I've ended up burning my hand multiple times, because when you say a deck, you agree to it, but eventually you find that it doesn't hold that level of strength. And that is where an individual investor or a co-founder, he struggles, because you don't have that mechanism, that machinery, right, to evaluate the startup properly. With that, I would like to thank all of our panelists. It was a very, very interesting discussion. I hope all of you would have also liked it, because we have a very different perspectives, a different type of people talking different things. And Sanjeev, Jinesh, Shiva, Dr. Abhishek, Ashudeep, Shalini, thanks a lot. You all have been kind to give time. And I believe, those entrepreneurs, those budding founders would get more of, I'll say, that comfort today, that the VC ecosystem is still backing them. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everyone. Nice meeting you.
Same here.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we have very interesting discussion, on a key aspect of agriculture, that is the venture capital funding. Now, we would like to delve into something a little bit different than a panel discussion. Generally, keynote address we keep for industry expert, but being the last session, we thought, let us share interesting work which we have done. What we have done is that actually, past month and a half, in fact, past close to 6 weeks, we have had discussion with a lot of different stakeholders, the entrepreneurs, the investors, the incubators, the think tanks, who have been working in edtech domain, and predominantly working around the investment part of it. And this is where actually we thought we should come out with something which is in a short way of explaining the mismatch between typically the investor ecosystem and the entrepreneurs, and trying to bridge that gap in making them understand what are the challenges, or what are the myths actually, one part of the group, that is investor, is having about the founders, or the entrepreneurs, and similarly what entrepreneurs believe is not always right about investors. So I'll just share my screen and do a small presentation. I think Neeraj can help me in telling me if my screen is visible. Neeraj,
Yes.
is it with?
Yes, it's
Perfect. So thanks a lot for this, I'll say, that fast-paced keynote. I would not take more than 8 to 9 minutes, because we have another interesting panel discussion coming up. So today what I'm trying to do is that debunking the funding myths. Now, as I said, it is based on close to 102 interviews, in which those who were being talked with were not aware actually, that we will be trying to create some insight out of that. And all of these were good friends, and the discussion was around multiple aspects. But our focus was to understand that what are the myths a specific type of group or a category, for example, the entrepreneurs, are having about the investors, and vice versa. So the first myth we have found that about investors, which majority of entrepreneurs were having, and how investors perceive that typically an entrepreneur thinks that actually, the investor, they love storytelling. While majority of investors believe that story, which is a coherent story and which leads to a certain understanding of the mindset of an entrepreneur, is important, but that is not always a deciding factor. So it might open the doors for you to have the second level, third level of conversation, but the decision of investing or not, it doesn't, it goes just with the storytelling. So you might be a great storyteller, you'll be able to open door, but if the substance is lacking, as an entrepreneur in what you are doing, if your clarity of ideas about the solution you are trying to take care of, if your team is not in place to solve that, and you are not having a very well structured roadmap of how you'll be solving that problem, then thing doesn't last too much. So I've seen that a lot of entrepreneurs going for these storytelling classes. So it is overrated as per the investors. Second myth is that actually they are interested only in exits. So always you'll find that there would be a lot of emphasis in the pitch deck by the entrepreneurs when they are pitching to an investor is how to get the exit. They talk about there would be strategic buyout, we'll go for an IPO. And believe me, the perspective of investors were that actually they want those entrepreneurs who want to build business. For them, that if exits is over talked about, that means the entrepreneur itself is not very serious about the business. He's in the business only to raise fund and have a higher valuation and then exit. But if he's really aligned to solving a specific problem, then the exit will give windfall gain to the investor as well as the entrepreneur both. And that is a win-win situation. So again, investors are not too much aligned about looking at exits. Yes, exit is important for any investor because eventually that is how they would be able to fund further other more startups. But that is not a very critical aspect when they evaluate a startup. The third myth which the entrepreneurs were having about investors is that they romance the GMVs, revenues, and the top lines. So even in today's discussion, if you could have heard that subtle message being given, that these matrices keep on changing. So it is not always fixed. Maybe what 3 years back was GMVs or revenues or top lines, because that time not too many startups were actually revenue generating startup. So as the ecosystem evolves, the matrices also change. So the investor doesn't romance any specific matrice. The matrices get evolved. And it is also very specific to the stage a startup is in, whether he is raising a Series A, Series B, or Series C. So based on those parameters, right, they like to see different numbers and different matrices. So it's not always GMVs and revenues and the top lines which investors are chasing. Fourth myth was that the investors want to control the direction of startups. Again, of late, we have seen that because of corporate governance issues, right, investors are started taking a little bit closer look at different aspects of business of an startup which they would have funded, or they would be funding in future. So they look at a little bit, I'm saying that closer to how the balance sheet has evolved. They do due diligence a little bit more. They get into the forensic audit also. And those type of things are happening. But that is never to get a control of the startup and its direction. Investor always believe that the entrepreneur knows far better than them how to run his own business. But at the same time, as their reputations are involved, as their money is involved, they would like to have an oversight. So the oversight is sometimes mistook as trying to control. But at the same time, whether you are just diluting 1% of your company or you're diluting 99% of the company, right? The term sheet always very clearly mention do's and don'ts and what are the rights of those who have invested in a company. So I think this is an overstated phenomena where a lot of those startup who doesn't get funded by investors, they claim that we are not raising the fund because we don't want to be directed by the investors and that might change our trajectory. But when you see it from the investors' perspective, they are not very keen to control any startup. Now coming to the fifth myth, and this was a little bit I'm saying that the message which I got from the entrepreneurs was that the large investors, the large VC firms, they become sector bullies. So they are not even just trying to direct the startups they are working with, but they also try to change the course of the sector itself. We gave example that if a large VC is investing in biotech companies, then suddenly the flavor of the town would be the biotech. If they are investing heavily in digital space, then everybody will start talking about digital play. Or for example, they are not looking for grassroots investment, so nobody talks about. See, the idea here is very simple. When a large VC invest something around 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, 100 million, the noise would be around it. So it is not that actually a VC is trying to guide or direct the sector. VCs understand the sector as much as an entrepreneur. There is not too much of difference between them. So they both go with the flow. They want to find what are the specific critical challenges which need to be solved. If those challenges are having sufficient total addressable market or not. If yes, then they invest. because they invest, the market talks about it. So it's not that they're trying to guide sector to a specific direction. I strongly believe in a country like India, only capable party who can direct a sector to go in a specific direction is government. It cannot be entrepreneurs, or it cannot be the venture capital firms. So again, this is a myth which I believe entrepreneurs should understand. It is because large VC invests a large amount of money in a specific sector, it would be talked about. But it's not that investors want to take a sector into a specific direction. But yes, everybody wants the sector to be more efficient. Everybody wants sector to be more transparent, and everybody wants to create, as Jinesh also said during the panel discussion, that they are upbeat about this sector. And I believe that is what drives everyone in this sector. Now let us debunk some of the myths which investors told me about entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs don't agree that happens. So one thing which investors were overtly talking about was that entrepreneurs to raise fund, they overcommit a lot. So in subsequent discussion after the funding, those numbers, when they are not met, there is a little bit of friction. And from the entrepreneur side, the logic was that actually they are always optimistic. They have to be optimistic, because if they're not optimistic, they won't be able to drive the businesses which they are in. And this leads to sometime commitment, which generally doesn't get fulfilled. Secondly, they also believe that there are so many factors in agriculture which are not under their control, and because of which some of the numbers which they have committed doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean that the intention was to overcommit. The intention is always to be rooted to the ground. But unfortunately, sometimes it does happen that because of the excitement they're having, because of the optimism they're having, when the reality is not exactly the same, then the investors start seeing entrepreneurs as those who are overcommitting. Another myth about entrepreneurs which investors were having is that they are focused on raising funds, not building businesses. And this was, I believe, a lot of investors talked about it, and they said that actually whenever they see this zeal of raising fund more than building business, that is a turn off. And from the entrepreneur's perspective, it was that actually the growth capital is very critical. And in agriculture, it is the game where it's a game of long term, and not all the entrepreneurs would be having sufficient capital themselves to be afloat for a long time. So they always would like to have a bigger pie whenever possible. And that's why actually they are very excited, or they are very aggressive in raising the funds. So you'll find that they'll chase the investor, they'll make call multiple times, do a lot of follow-up. But the only intention which they're saying is that they need growth capital. So the focus is to build business, but capital is a very critical aspect of it. And hence they're seen as being overtly aggressive in raising fund, which is not actually the case. They need this fund only to build their businesses. Another myth which investors had about entrepreneurs is that they pivot too early and too much. So investors had the view that actually at the first sign of trouble, entrepreneur would come with a plan that actually because of so and so happened, we would like to pivot, and I need your support. The support could be a request of pumping a little bit more funds, because now what they have done in the past has actually not having that sufficient traction going forward. So more funds will be required to move in a certain direction. This is where the entrepreneurs, they believe that actually agriculture being dynamic sector, sometimes there is hit with the government policy, sometimes it is hit with the monsoons, a good monsoon or a bad monsoon. Sometimes they also see that there are cycles which impact their business, and they have no option just to keep afloat. They have to switch. So for example, a company or a startup which was talking about disintermediation of the value chain by removing the middleman, they wanted to start creating an ecosystem of middleman. So this is, I know, total 360-degree turnaround or U-turn in general discussion. But the startup believe that that is only the way forward to be afloat and be successful. And that is where they believe things would be better off going forward. Now, this is where I strongly believe that it's, again, investor has to see with the perspective of the mindset of an entrepreneur, because they are also like farmers. They invest a lot of their own capital, their effort, and they also don't want their businesses to fail. But an investor with sufficient support through its network can see to it in case they believe that the current business model is good enough and persuade them in continuing it forward. So I believe this is also has to be a win-win situation for both entrepreneur as well as an investor. Now, another myth was that they are superficial in understanding the problem. And this is where entrepreneurs believe that actually, many of them, they have to dabble into multiple areas of activity. They might not sound very intelligent when it comes to handling the finances, while they might not sound very intelligent in trying to understand exactly what farmer is doing on the ground, because they might be only serving a specific part of the complete agriculture sector. And this is where they believe that it's not that they are superficial. They understand their trade. So if they're technocrat, they understand technology very well, but they might not be having sufficient understanding for the sector. But when they reach out to investors, their idea is to have sufficient money so that they can onboard those type of capabilities which are required to make a business successful. So they might not be able to answer some of the detailed question about certain aspect of their business, but that is where they are raising funds so that they can hire someone who can provide that level of understanding. And the last and the fifth myth about the entrepreneurs is that they lack appetite to listen or act on a criticism. And this is where actually, entrepreneurs, they believe that when they are making presentations, when they are pitching about their ideas, sometimes it does happen that they become too defensive about what they have been thinking, because they are themselves are in dilemma that actually, in case they see the space too easily, investor would think that actually this person is not very persistent about what he believes is right and what needs to be done. So they always are on I'll say that very thin line where they want to sound to be confident, but they end up being seen as someone with the attitude of not listening to the criticism or any negative feedback about what they're doing. Now, those are entrepreneurs who have already raised fund and they believe that criticism came during the board meetings or during the discussion with those who have invested in their company. They believe that actually if they say yes to everything which an investor is saying, then it would become very difficult for them to run their business. So for them actually they believe that all the positive feedback coming in the right tone is welcome, but at some place they have to be in control of running their business. With that, actually, I believe this is what the finding which we had after engaging with so many different types of stakeholders. And I believe both sides, whether it's entrepreneurs or the investor, would understand the shortcoming of other, and we together can build beautiful businesses of future and make India proud. With that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and we would now like to go to our next panel discussion. So this is another interesting panel discussion where we have invited some of the top agri-entrepreneurs, all from diverse fields. So sectors like dairy to those working in millets, those having drones, those working on sustainable packaging, control environment farming, vertical farming, you name it. And we are having a different type of stakeholders, all part of it. I would request my colleague to enable video of all my awesome panelists, and then I can introduce them. So excellent. So now I would like to introduce first Ranjit. Ranjit is CEO and co-founder of Stell Apps, a company which has been trying to redefine how the dairy industry in India is currently aligned, and they have done phenomenal work in deploying deep tech in dairy sector. Welcome, Ranjit. Pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure, Deepak. Thank you for having me.
Then we have got Vishala. Vishala, she is being known as millet woman of India. She has been working on ancient grains, and now government has been talking about for past couple of years about millets and International Year of Millet and all that. But Vishala has been doing it for far longer than that. So welcome aboard, Vishala, for this discussion.
Thank you, Deepak. Looking forward.
Then we are having Kunal. Kunal is co-founder at Bamboo. In his previous avatar, he has been building Cropin and pretty successful startup in digital space, now trying to work on sustainable packaging. So I think his heart has moved from digital to sustainability. Welcome aboard, Kunal.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Then we are having Saurabh. Saurabh is founder and CEO of Grow It, a company which work on controlled environment farming and protective farming. They have also very recently come out with a digital product to understand soil a little bit better. And also, I'll say that one of great thing they have done is that they have represented the Indian EdTech at Shark Tank and got some investment also. Welcome, Saurabh, to you.
Deepak, thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
Then we have got Sriram Gopal. So Sriram is CEO of Future Farms, and Future Farms, as you know, is working on next level of agriculture, which is hydroponic and something which you would like to associate with sci-fi, growing beautiful food in containers in packaged environment, and maybe one day in space as well. Welcome, Sriram.
Thank you, Deepak, for having me.
Yeah, and then we have got Amandeep. So in the previous discussion also, we had some discussion about drones, how it can solve some of the challenges of lack of farm labor. So Amandeep, he's a co-founder and CEO at Bharat Rohan, which is one of a premier drone company working in AgTech. Welcome, Amandeep, to you as well.
Thank you, Deepak.
So I start with you, Ranjit. You're active in one of the most difficult subsector in Indian agriculture, right? So in the previous panel discussion, we talked about we are having highest number of cattle and lowest amount of productivity, and you're trying to solve that dilemma of how to make Indian dairy sector more productive. Would like to understand from you how difficult was your journey and some of the learnings you would like to give to upcoming founders who want to work in this difficult sector.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak, for having me on about here. I hope I'm audible. Sometimes I have an issue with my laptop. I'm audible?
All good, all good. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and
100%.
a warm welcome to all my fellow panelists. Great to be talking on this panel with some of you here. So in terms of dairy, milk, cows, buffaloes. These are not some things that you associate with deep tech a lot of times, right? You associate deep tech with many other sectors. You associate digitization with many other sectors, and this is a sector that's we had a lot of hurdles as we went deeper into this sector. So looking back, if you ask me, will you reattempt something like this all over again? I'd probably think twice because when we started, we hardly knew what lay ahead of us. So a lot of times, ignorance helps, right? You sort of feel you can solve the problem and you dive headlong into it, and then it's like it's too late and you anyway have to solve the problem. And we've been at it for 13 years now. The idea is to now solve it at scale in some way or the other. So it's been a lot of tricky problems that we had to encounter when it comes to milk, dairy, animals, and all of it. But at the outset, when we got started, all of us, my co-founders from an engineering background, mainly from a software engineering background, the idea was to solve a problem. The idea was to get in with a problem-solving mindset. And it's not always good because our business acumen wasn't probably as high. So if you ask me, आप धंधा करना जानते हो तब I would say no, probably we didn't have a strong dhanda mindset, which is very important in a retrospect, right? Over time, we've hopefully evolved a little bit. I saw one of your myths that co-founders might understand solutions and products, but may not understand the dhanda aspect much, which is pretty much true. Even today, we keep trying to sharpen our dhanda mindset and see can we make every pie count? Can we, is there a way to make money? That's what business is all about. But when we started, we didn't have a strong mindset in that direction. We were all quite happy, hunky-dory solving problems, but not necessarily seeing where the margins are, not necessarily looking at the XIRRs, not necessarily looking at the ROCE numbers, which is which is an important dimension to have. But I think the kids these days are much more smarter. They come into the sector with that mindset as well, which we were quite foolhardy that way. We didn't get into it. We got it purely from a problem solving mindset. And also we were new to the domain. We couldn't, as I often say when we started, tell a cow from a bull when we started, right? So the idea was it made it doubly harder. Right, being newbies, to the domain, and we didn't have the wherewithal to bootstrap things ourselves. And I remember Deepak saying that we were dependent on venture capital to scale at beyond a point. And this was not a sector that attracted a lot of venture capital when we started. In general, we're talking 2010, 2011 when we started, especially agri and dairy, right, was virtually unheard of from a venture capital point of view. We were lucky to get incubators like IIT Madras who came along and say, hey, we can incubate you. Omnivore, who supported us as an institutional investor, then subsequently Bloom. So we're quite lucky, that way. So the idea is, keep at it, and at some point, luck will also knock, on your door. And this is a domain that's fairly old-fashioned and analog, right? So the idea is, to digitize it, we had to apply a lot of first principles thinking. How do you digitize? How do you capture animal activities? How do you capture various milk flow that happens in a highly fragmented network? You're talking about 80 million smallholder farmers, 300 million cattle, 80 million smallholder farming families, in fact, right? 300 million cattle, and how do you sort of, digitize it? So it's always important for us to keep applying the first principles thinking, not be shy, to touch, hardware, not be shy to also, get into the mechanical engineering aspects of it, get into the civil engineering aspects of it, and not say that we'll only solve it at software and data layer. And we're quite lucky again to get, investors like Qualcomm coming in the way and say, hey, look, it's not exactly what we had in mind in terms of wearables, but you're building animal wearables, and we might as well, support you. And a lot of mini pivots along the way. I know Deepak made pivot sound like a bad thing in his presentation, but the way we see it, the way I see it, is the ability to adapt and respond to the market. As people say, no matter how greatly you think about your product, no matter how highly we think about a go-to-market strategy, market is always right, customer is always right. So when you're not getting the right responses, we believe it's important to adapt, right? So people call adaptation as pivot, but the idea is to keep on adapting till you sort of hum along, until you're able to sort of generate profits in a stable state. So in our journey, we had to sort of adapt quite a bit with a farm-centric approach, where we only thought everything's about a farm, moving to a more value chain center thinking, moving to not just think about it as software and data, also solve it at an operational layer, start running operations ourselves. So we had to make a number of adaptations to survive, and your survival instincts kicks in a lot of time, and you sort of implement some of these things very acutely, because otherwise you wouldn't survive, to see the light of the day. So those would be some of my initial, remarks in the interest of time on how we went about it, some of the situations we faced, and how we adapted, and a take at some of the myths that Deepak was just presenting before the call started. Deepak?
Sure. Okay, thanks, Aranjit. Very well elaborated. No, actually, I was not talking about pivoting is a bad thing, but I'm saying that there was a different perception about within the entrepreneurs and investors. So both saw things a little bit differently. Going to you, Vishala, you have been working at the grassroots with farmers, helping them with the ancient grain, right? And millets have been talked about now. What motivated you to work on such a non-glamorous sector, right? No talk of biotech, digital tech, and all that, and working at the grassroots level. And believe me, some of the photographs I've seen you working in there are fabulous. I got fascinated with what the work you're doing, and beautiful storefront you are having at HICC Center, right? And the great work you have done. So, what motivated you to do something which is quote unquote is not that glamorous?
Well, actually, I think the other way around, Deepak. Nowadays, everybody is thinking that being in millet sector is being very glamorous. Actually, that's a perception. At least it is changing. Good, it is good. And
because of you.
Probably yes. I raised the bar a little bit, so proud of that. And actually, I am from farming community, and 100 of my relatives are still farmers. So I'm the only one who came out and got into school and then college. So 20 first 20 years I spent in my village only, and the next 20 years I was in the hospitality and tourism industry, and I was working for this business events industry. And then during COVID, the industry was down a bit, all of us know. And then I was in my village for 3 months, and that's when my sister She's in Karnataka. We are from the Karnataka and Andhra border, and she has grown the best variety of foxtail millet. And it was so good that the Karnataka government, the agriculture department came and took her photographs, and she was featured in all the dairies and all that. But when I have seen that, small traders, they're coming and they were asking her for the grain, and they were asking for 12 rupees and 15 rupees and 20 rupees. So I felt like very bad, because it takes a lot to grow millets. It's not very easy, a lot of drudgery and manual labor. So I thought, why don't I use my skill which I earned in the city, like probably a little bit of marketing and sales, and then that is how I started helping my sister. And then I felt it is just helping my sister is not enough. So I have to motivate my all family farmers and my relatives also to grow. And there was an agricultural shed which was unused for the last 15 years. There were rats, roaming around here and there. So I converted that into a very glamorous community center for millet farmers, and I set up like a museum, and then many people started coming and asking, and there was some discussions, and then there was some revival of millet crops. So that is how the story started. And initially my idea was just to help the millet farmers just within the 10 or 20 kilometers radius of my village. But after seeing the response from my friends and everywhere, then I thought, why don't we build a value chain? So that is how our vision has become much bigger, and our work is now more diverse. So yeah, that's pretty much the journey.
Sorry, I was on mute while I was talking.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So Kunal, next question to you, from a cutting edge digital play in agriculture to sustainable packaging. As an entrepreneur, how do you see opportunities in sustainable packaging? And we would like to understand the work you are doing, because it's pretty fascinating.
Thanks so much on this, Deepak. So yeah, I mean, I think tech is there everywhere. The way they want to use it, it makes sense for both for you as well as your customers. And having done that at Cropin, taken at global scale, there's a lot of learning that I've already had. Now coming to Bamboo, then the company mostly focuses on in terms of sustainable packaging. And when you talk about the market opportunity and the reason for starting of this business is basically it's a $300 billion opportunity. Right. And it's not just about the TAM that we talk about. It's about the consciousness that each one of us have. Right. If you talk about, I can give a statement that mothers are feeding nanoplastics to babies. Right. You see that research are saying that placentas are having nanoplastics, which means that if I tell the mother that you are feeding nanoplastic to your babies, what will be the response? And that's the problem statement that you're trying to tackle. Right. So everywhere you see, it's all plastics, right? From primary to secondary to tertiary packaging, you use plastics, and plastics gets consumed in different ways. You use a cup, you pour coffee in that, you take it from a sachet of coffee. Everywhere the product gets contaminated with nanoplastics, and when you consume it, it goes into your body. In one of the competitions we were there last week, it was a Zomato challenge. One of the chief sustainability officers talked about that on a weekly basis, a person consumes almost one credit card. Now, how does it feel like when we actually know those facts? And this is what basically is the genesis of Bamboo. Bamboo basically focuses on in terms of solving this particular problem statement where plastics can be replaced by alternative materials. And thankfully, the institution in the last 4 years has been able to build a material which is completely biodegradable and home compostable, which means that if you throw it out in the open, you can consume a packet of chip, or you can have a packet of seeds, or you can use it in any forms. You use it and throw it in the open with the food. When it gets touched in terms of with water and then the soil, it'll degrade within 130 days. So the lot of consumer awareness and the need is there, which actually triggers and brings us this big opportunity that is all out there. We talk also about 9.8 billion tons of plastic. Assume that every single individual of us has contributed 1 ton of plastic all around, and that is going to grow as well. That is not going to be sustainable. If we can replace those plastics with alternate materials from now onwards, those plastics will degrade, plus we will also not be adding any more plastics into the environment. So the opportunity of reducing or further damaging the environment is much out there for all of us. Now, if you talk also about from the awareness, government are very much aware that this is not going to be sustainable. So from a regulation perspective, the opportunity is that everyone is talking about that we have to use alternate materials. So you talk about different parts of the world, 76 countries have banned single-use plastics. Now it is also banned in India, but it's coming in some form. But maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, you will see that most of the things will be converted into normal packaging, which is also sustainable and biodegradable. Which means in India itself could be $100 billion opportunity that is all out there. Right. So from an opportunity, the TAM that we have and the consciousness of the consumers and the regulations of the government, I personally feel it's a Paytm moment, right? While we have talked about agriculture being slow and it takes its own time, I feel that this is an opportunity where if we tackle this particular problem statement in the right way, it can really bring in a lot of value for not only the business that we are working on, but also for the end customers that are actually consuming different types of materials in different forms across the world. That's the work that we are doing, and very happy to partner with most of my agriculture colleagues. I'm actually trying and partnering with them to solve their problems of packaging. Either they are doing fresh fruits and vegetables, or they are doing some primary packaging. All of them are getting into newer varieties of millets packaging or FMCG packaging. So we have the solutions, and very happy to work with the fraternity in solving the problem collectively.
Super awesome, very interesting aspect. Definitely don't want the infants to be fed plastic, right? That is the clear no, and the society needs to work on ensuring that doesn't happen because they cannot even complain. Going to you, Saurabh, you are actually promoting the plastic. So in control protected environment farming, right? Plastic will play a role. I understand that. But we have seen that adoption of protective farming is is a slow process, right? Now you being, I'm saying that from an entrepreneurial background yourself, family being into business for long, why you got into this sector rather than continuing business of what your family was doing, and try to solve the problem of making agriculture, I'll say that, more productive and efficient.
So yeah, thank you first of all, Deepak, for having me in this August conference. Kunal, took a little bit of what I was supposed to say. So I come from a packaging background, where my family has been in the packaging sector for over 50 years, and we have been, processing plastic materials for over 50 years and providing to various B2B segments, barring apart food till now. So we were primarily in the FMCG sector, where we were supplying to pharma and the shampoos and cosmetics and B2B segments. So that was our primary business. But unfortunately I lost my dad in 2014, and that's when, in order to find some peace, me and my mother sort of turned to little bit of farming activities in a small piece of land that we had. So that was my first interaction to sort of say agriculture, and it sort of stuck from there on. And in 2016 I got so much involved into that small piece of land that I stopped coming to office, and I used to spend the whole day there. So that's when I started thinking that how can I convert my core competence into something which can contribute towards the agriculture sector. So that's how I transitioned from the packaging sector to the agriculture sector. And since we have been into the packaging sector for a long time, and my younger brother, he is actually a plastics engineering from MIT US. So along with him, we started doing some research as to what are the shortcomings in the agriculture sector and how we can contribute with the know-how that we have. So we started doing research and came out with certain products which primarily we all must have seen or observed in India since almost more than 30 years. But one problem that we have in our ecosystem is that we always make everything generic, everything a commodity, whereas certain things are not meant to be commodities. So that's where my research and my studies showed me that a common products like maybe mulching films or crop covers or shade nets, which are not used by the people understanding as to what result oriented products can do. So that's where my studies in Israel and Spain specifically helped me to understand, and we reinvented those products as per the Indian conditions and sort of started working with the farmers. Going through the traditional channels did not help, because education and awareness creation was the biggest challenge that we faced. Coming from a B2B background, never thought that I would be dealing with farmers at all in life. So that uphill task was what was lying ahead of me. So that's when we came up with those demonstration farms and started doing demonstrations to the farmers about how this concept actually works. So that is how I came into this sector. One of the primary triggers was that how low penetration of these kind of concepts India has, as compared to the global penetration of almost 50-60%. In some countries, it is almost up to 80-90%. So in India, the penetration of such concepts is almost negligible, which is 1.5% at this point of time. So that is what triggered that, this is a completely blue ocean where we can make our own mark and also contribute to the overall development of the ecosystem. So that's what triggered. Also, the biggest challenge was that our farmers are actually farmers by lineage. They're not farmers by education majorly. So, creating that awareness was something which we really need to work on. And that is where, our collaborative approach, where, we came together with the industry. I think, Deepak, I met you first time in the APSA Awards in Hyderabad, I think a couple of years back. So that was my first ever, event where I attended agri event and not knowing anybody in the room. And that was the point when I took it on me that I want to know all the people in the agri sector and want to collaborate with them, because I alone cannot make a change. I think it's the community coming together can change the entire concept. So that was the whole idea behind we entering into this sector. So yeah, that was how we turned around. And initially the task was that nobody was able to understand what we are talking about, because when you talk of technology in a product like mulch films and crop covers, people used to say, "Isme kya technology? This is plastic. Every plastic is same." But to convince them that not every plastic is same. So that's where the entire concept was. And yeah, but today we are getting the right recognition, and people are understanding how the entire change has happened over past 3 years.
No, excellent work for sure. Saurabh, I understand. I've read about some of your work. Your mulch films are actually far better than actually any of the plastic being used in past. So their footprint of giving nano plastics is far lesser than actually other previously used mulch films. So congratulations on that. Going to Shriram now. Shriram, you have gone a little bit ahead of that, right? Hydroponics, precision agriculture, mechanization. And these are very nascent, I'd say, activity in country like India. But I believe you are doing project all across the world with, I think, 60 odd projects you have done globally. And I would like to understand from you, what motivated, you to start such project from India? Because generally hydroponics and all that, you look at Netherlands, you look at UAE, you would look at maybe Jakarta or Singapore, where the land costs are too high and you would like to do such interesting farming. In a country like India, we are having too much of land, fallow land. Take a helicopter in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, you find no cultivation being done. That's I believe that's atrocious criminal waste of land. We should find way to cultivate it. But again, hydroponic in India, little looks off, right? But you have done it successfully. To understand from you.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you, Deepak, for having me among this great panel. So the question you asked me, right? So what got me into this? The really truthful, candid answer is ignorance. So this is so now that I've spent 12 years in this space. When I came back from the UK, I finished my master's, and I've been brought up in a business family. So you think once you finish a degree, you have this cape around you and you'll come and transform anything that you touch. And we were from the photography industry. So by the time, my idea was pretty simple, that I will finish my graduation, and we used to build the film process and printing machines. That's my family's business. So I never thought I'm going to get into agri, or for that matter, any other line. I just thought I will learn all my business skills and expand the family business. I had this rude awakening when my dad said, photography is going to change forever within the next 3-4 years. So everything that we have built is going to be disrupted, right? Because that was the shift from film to digital. So I was just dropped out there after my graduation, without knowing what stream to do. I believed I was intelligent, but there was no way to prove that. I did the most obvious thing an Indian would do after college, right? Picked up few of my friends and said, let's start an IT company. So I spent almost 7 years building products because that was the dot-com kind of boom time. So in that journey, I came across sustainability in the form of building management or building energy management systems. So, did a lot of work in that space and understood how, understanding how buildings function, how to use all your equipment, measuring data can actually save a lot of or build a lot of efficiencies in buildings. And strangely, this kind of led us to the roofscape of buildings. So once we went there, everybody said just by having a green cover on a building's roof, you can improve the energy efficiency of a building by 20%. So how do you build a green cover on a roof when there is no soil, where there is no water or any infrastructure that supports a green cover? So somewhere down the line, this journey led me to the discovery of a technology called hydroponics. And once I knew it, and once I saw all the videos, I could not sleep for a day. Like, I'm like, what? People are growing plants directly on water in multiple levels. There is no soil, and it's more an engineering subject than an agricultural subject. So what I immediately did was I started researching on its potential in India and how many people are, actively pursuing this. And to my surprise, there were barely any, or I can even say none. There were one or two people who were talking about it, but there was no real infrastructure for this domain, right? So from there, it was just a mad idea because I was really bored with this whole, selling IT as a service and things like that. And I think I already proved a point to my father that, I can make money. So I had that cushion. So I just dived straight into it. And I said, okay, I'm going to solve the world's oldest problem, agriculture, with this newly found technology. I did go to all the universities, right, to get the professors' inputs and so on. Everyone said it won't work in India, much like, what you had also mentioned, because of the logical, all the other reasons. But I just asked them one question in return, like, have any of you tried it? I didn't get a straight answer. Not even one person said, yeah, but we have, we've read about it, we have done it on lab scale and whatnot. So with this, I was pretty convinced that, it's something that is not for the now, but, how would our, because of my experience with buildings, I know that the cities are not shrinking, but farmlands are, and we are building more concrete jungles. The farmers are getting pushed away further and further. So there must be a way to inculcate, food into urban areas. And clearly, with there is only concrete and roofscapes and all of that, soil is something that's going to be pushed further away. So this gave me the slightest hope, right? But this was a starting point. So from there to now, we are a full stack controlled environment agriculture solutions company where we don't even believe it's technology. We believe it's information, it's data. So it's basically understanding of what a crop needs and building all of this. Today, we can call it hydroponics, aeroponics, drip irrigation, precision farming, drone. But finally, we are trying to grow a better capsicum, and that's what it all encompasses. And can you grow it better? And of course, if you look at the Indian ecosystem, you have a lot of development in the upstream and the downstream. But I somehow find that the midstream or the mainstream has been kind of left as a vacuum. Like I would even debate like what is ag tech, but I will leave that thought for now and maybe, subsequently, yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. Like, midstream has been totally neglected, right? So when we talk about farming practices on ground, right? Our extension is broken, and the soil you are talking about, even the farm today, it doesn't have soil. It has just dirt. It doesn't have any organic content in that. So it is just a substrate. It is not living soil, which is required for a good farming. Going to you, Amandeep, right? The drones has been talked a lot, right? There have been pushed from the government. They have been pushed from the corporates. I see the Prime Minister also flying 100 drones for agriculture, Krishi drones. But again, when we go to on the grassroots level, right, the challenges are humongous. Whether it is getting a certificate from the local police station to fly the drone, to who is having the risk and all that. So what propelled you to get into this sector, and what are the opportunities and challenges you see in using drone in agriculture?
Yeah, thank you so much, Deepak. So I think we started the company back in 2016. At that point of time, drones were not so popular. People were also very skeptical about using drones in agriculture. And cut to now in 2024, like government is all about drones, and they're pushing, so many schemes, into for this particular domain. There are various challenges, I think, that I'll talk about. But one of the opportunity that we saw early on was identifying the crop issues in the very early stages, and that's something that intrigued us. Where we can offer farm specific advisory for the farmers. And the idea was to form clusters in villages, access the data using drones mounted with multispectral, hyperspectral sensors, and then use that data to generate advisory about what action is required to be taken, based on the diagnosis that we carry out. And this can then further be extended to using this data for precision spraying, where we can then use spraying drones to use the data that we basically the prescription maps that we generate using the crop monitoring, and only spray on the locations which which have been identified for the particular crop issue. So the major challenge that came up was the scalability, and most of the investors and most of the people always have this kind of a question that how would we scale? And what we had figured out in the early stages was that beyond a certain point we'll not be able to charge farmers directly if we'll not be offering a comprehensive solution to them. So that's what we figured, that number one solution is that we bring them on board in clusters so that our efficiency could be improved. We can service a larger set of farmers at once. A single drone, when it takes a flight, it can cover around 250 acres of area. If we are not able to capture that much area and not able to advise those many farmers, then we are losing out on the efficiency. So we partner with a lot of farmer producer companies, NGOs, and then cooperatives who can provide access to those kind of clusters, and work with them closely in providing them the farmers with the advisory. Second is we introduced, and that's something that we learned the hard way, that just providing advisory is not going to be enough. So we started supplying them with the agri inputs, based on the diagnosis that we carry out, and then we even went on to the length of procuring their farm produce and supplying to large institutional buyers. It sounds very complex that why would a drone company be involved into agri input supply and then procurement, but this is how we have been able to sustain from last 8 years and have been able to build some profitability out of the business. So yeah, that's the approach that we followed. In terms of the use cases, what we have been doing is, while we advise farmers on what kind of action is required to be taken, we follow a certain guideline like the IPM practices, integrated pest management practices, where we ensure that farmers are not using chemicals beyond certain limit, so that the produce that comes out of as harvest is free from those chemical residues. And we are building a niche where the farmers who associate with us are growing IPM produce, which we procure and supply to the niche buyers, who are looking for those IPM food products. So that's something that we have been able to establish. We have been working on seed spices, pulses, oil seeds, and now expanding to other crops as well. And in terms of challenges, I think there is a lot of investment that is needed. So when we are required to scale, the idea is to maybe create some franchisee owners or rural entrepreneurs who can purchase the equipment. But even for them, purchasing the equipment is difficult and costly. So thanks to the government, but they have introduced some subsidies and then interest subvention schemes. But we are still working out on how they can access it more easily. How the regulatory hurdles can be solved, and then we are able to scale this through a franchisee model. So that's how we are approaching this problem particularly.
Yeah, Amandeep, sorry, going a little bit tangential, a piece of advice, because you talked about the challenges, right? when you are making these franchisee can access, there is something called Agriculture Infrastructure Fund by Government of India, right? And that's up to 2 CR per village, right? You can create, right? That for which the government will give at very, very reduced interest rate, the loan.
Yeah.
Secondly, you can also dovetail all the subsidies which are available, because AIF fast track even the access to the subsidies, whether at the state government, central government level. So if you want, I can connect you with the joint secretary who runs the AIF and look at it. I think that's a very interesting way of scaling it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We are working on AIF itself. So there are, certain self-help groups which have approached us in purchasing the drones and becoming a franchisee for us. So particularly like in states like Odisha, in Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan. So there are a lot of SSGs that we have tied up with, and we are providing them access to AIF. Where there is around 3% interest subvention, and they are going to avail the finance for the purchase of drones, and then on top of it they'll be also applying for the subsidy from the government. So that's is really helpful for them to scale. So yeah.
Right. And I raised this point because there was a lot of question being asked in chat, right? How government can help it, whether government is helping startup ecosystem or not. I think these type of initiative itself are big help when we talk about the startup ecosystem, because it can increase the revenues of the company like Bharat Rohan. Going back to Ranjit, right? We have seen a lot of fatality happening in startup space since you started Stell Apps, right? Not many startups has actually scaled to the level they should now, but you stand with a very substantial numbers, right? Impacting 2 million farmers, working with a million cattle, right? What is the secret sauce, right? I've seen you doing it persistently, growing year on year. And I think, if I'm not wrong, you would be hitting a profitability numbers, right, this year itself. So what's the secret sauce?
Yeah, and I wish there was one answer, to it. For us, every day is a cliffhanger. We still hang by the cliff every day. So probably we've perfected it to a stage where it's an art where how you hang by the cliff, but you still survive to see the day, the light of the day, the next day. So I wouldn't by any means, by any stretch of imagination, say that we are still successful. But yes, we have managed to stay afloat. As I said, 13 years at it. Still every day, we always look back and say, how do I survive to see the next day or the next week? That's still the case today. So at some point it becomes a BAU for us, staying afloat, hanging by the cliff. It's sort of a business as usual. But if you look at what we've attempted to build, right, we step back and see we're sort of trying to build a traceable dairy, right? We mean two things when I say a traceable dairy. One, we deal with the farmers directly. Otherwise, you can't vouch for the traceability. And direct farmer interactions is pretty critical, especially in milk and dairy and all of that. That's number one. And number two, this being a highly fragmented sector, very smallholder farmers, multiple aggregation layers in the value chain, right from the collection center, chilling center, plants. Sitting here in Bangalore, the only way to ensure that all of the protocol is being followed is through tech. It might seem that there's overuse of tech a lot of times, but we think the only way to scale sustainably is for us to be able, in such a fragmented industry, such a fragmented value chain, is to have enough tech touch points so that we're able to ensure that the right quality metrics are met, the supply chain integrity is not broken. And it's not a very high margin sector yet, and hence cost optimization need to be looked at every single day. And the three rallying cry for us has been productivity, quality, and traceability. At any juncture, any service that we deploy, any product that we incorporate, is because we think it takes us one more step closer to solving for productivity, quality, and traceability. And for numbers, you quoted some numbers. We are in about 42,000 villages as we speak. Milk being a daily velocity agri-produce, if I may call it as an agri-produce. You need to be very hyper-local at the village. You can't operate at a taluka level. You get to see the farmers twice a day, every single day, almost throughout the year. We've onboarded about 3.5, 4 million farmers, about access to about 10 million cattle. But we believe these are still very tiny numbers in the overall macrocosm of what the entire sector entails. Still a lot of work to be done. And at every point in time, we've also responded to the market. Initially when we started, the idea was to sell tech to the farmers at these and help them scale, move from a 2 to 3 animal farmer to 10 to 15 animal farmer. And we failed miserably because there are not too many farmers who were willing to pay for tech. And I think all of us on the panel also would have realized that a tech sale to farmers directly beyond a point, it does not work. And hence we have to step back and take a more value chain centric approach. So it's difficult to predict this until you actually dive into it and start running it. Then you realize, right, it looks on the paper very powerful, but when you implement, it doesn't work. So you need to step back and then quickly adapt and then keep moving. And then also apply a lot of first principles approach, as I mentioned. In a lot of cases, we may not be able to just solve it with one dimension. It might need technology, it might need operations, it might need hardware, software. The idea is to keep applying first principles approach and then try to solve for it. Then build teams. We were a fairly big founding team when we started, but the idea is never stop building teams, because given that it's a complex problem, you need an ecosystem, you need good teams to solve it. The idea is not to reinvent the wheel. The idea is there are subject matter experts out there. How do you make them part of your approach? How do you make them engage them in a way that you don't have to rebuild the things that, or reacquire knowledge that they already have? And then at the end of the day, focus on execution. Sometimes it's pretty easy to get carried away with innovation, technology, and all of it. But what matters is, every day, how do you execute, your plan? So these are things that we keep doing, still keep learning. Still, as I said, it's a cliffhanger. I hope that, we'll be better with every passing day.
So follow-up question to you, Ranjit, I've been, I'm saying that grateful to your team. Actually, I have opportunity of visiting some of the work you're doing at the grassroots level, whether it was in Varanasi or Kolar or in Bihar, right? And I see that connect on working on a hyper local level. How difficult it is when you are trying to work pan India in multiple. I won't say pan India, but I'm saying in difficult geographies. Kolar is very different than Varanasi, is very different than Bihar, right? Whether we talk about Samastipur or like Purnia, and where you have been having those your setup and working very closely with the farmer. How difficult it is for any of companies to scale at such difficult territories.
Yeah, so for us, the Pan India approach has been intentional, right? And the way we looked at it is also as a risk mitigation strategy. If you're staying focused in one region, obviously it's sharper and you can scale that region. But at some point, there are going to be other issues that kick in. To give a simple example, in milk there is this concept of flush and lean season. Luckily for us, the UP and down south in Karnataka, they're diametrically opposite. When UP is in flush, Karnataka is in lean. When Karnataka is in flush, UP is in lean. So from a supply point of view, it helps for us to be multi-geography. So as you said, we operate in UP, Bihar, Bhilwara, Rajasthan, Chittorgarh, Tonk, down south, other than Kerala, everywhere else we operate. So the idea is, it helps as a risk mitigant, number one. Number two, we've been always a B2B company, right? So we never focus on trying to build a brand on the consumer side. So one of the commitments we've made to the ecosystem is that we'll try to de-regionalize the concept of milk. Milk has traditionally been a very regional concept. Amul is great, of course, in Gujarat, but they also have a pan-India presence today. But other than that, if you look at the other players, be it Saras or a VRS or a Parag or a Nandini down south or a Sudha Milk in Bihar, they're highly regional. They're really good in that place, because obviously you also need to keep building a brand. Pan India is not easy. So we thought, look, there are great brands out there. There's ITC, there's Unilever, and multiple brands. Why can't we become their backward integrated player? Why can't we become their Intel Insights, that they can focus on building brands, acquiring consumers, whereas we can power their products with high quality products, traceable, and all of it. But there are execution challenges. The culturally Eastern UP is very different from where the Karnataka operates. So the idea is to onboard the local ecosystem, have people who understand the local ecosystem to get on board. We start off as a Bangalore-based company focusing on Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and all of that. But then what time, the idea is if you put a senior resource from Tamil Nadu into UP, he or she is not going to be successful. Can we onboard local ecosystems, adapt to the local nuances, and the significant changes? The Eastern UP farmer is very different from the farmer here. But once you crack it on a pan-India level, it sort of helps as a huge risk mitigant. And the learning from one region can be applied to the other in a lot of cases. Right? What we do in Karnataka can be applied to UP. What we learn from UP can be applied to here. So these are some of the thoughts that come to my mind for taking on a pan-India approach.
Perfect. And one thing I can congratulate you, your team, Umesh and all that, they were in Gulf Food. And being a Marwadi, we love ghee, right? And the ghee which was being demonstrated there, believe me, I've never had such awesome, tasty ghee ever. So congratulate on that. Looking forward to more ghee from you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have it in store for you. Yep.
Great. So now again, going to Vishalaji, millet is cool, but let me touch upon some of the challenges, right? I also work extensively with the farmer. Now, a product which gives you between 500 to 800 kg per hectare, right? And you ask me to replace it with a product like wheat or rice, which give me from 3.2 ton per hectare to 4 ton per hectare. And then I put the price points. I see millet, being bought by the farmer should be at the 5 times the price of wheat or rice. But that doesn't happen. In similar scenario, what are the challenges you see, for India to really leverage the beauty of our ancient grain, and all these 9-10 millet and pseudo millets can do wonders. But at the same time, we are still not seeing that on the supply side, the real value unlocking happening. Your views on this, man? Ma'am, you're on mute, so you have to unmute. Yeah.
Sorry. So first of all, millets, as in a traditional scenario, was grown for domestic consumption. So people used to grow, the small and marginal farmers and the tribals, and then we used to hand pound and hand grind, and then it used to be used for domestic consumption. But suddenly now, it has been 40 years, this entire food system, which was passed on from so many years and decades, has been broken thanks to the green revolution, which was inevitable. We understand that. But now, without solving the grassroots level issues, we left that farming 40 years ago, and there is no ecosystem, there is no infrastructure, and a lot of challenges at the grassroots level. And we are asking them to grow for commercial purpose, which is not possible. So if you see in our own house itself, we used to have 30 varieties of millets and pulses and oilseeds. They come from the same kind of dryland ecosystem. So we used to save our own seeds, we used to have our own production capability, we used to have our own storage in our own way, and we were mastered in our own processing also for domestic purpose. But now this has to be the same culture we have to understand and get that ecosystem to the community level, because these are not grown everywhere. They're only grown by a couple of pockets of lands, and then they're all small farmers who doesn't have access to this infrastructure, and now the labor is very expensive. So a lot of challenges. So we have to think about this in an integrated way. So there has to be an integrated infrastructure and approach has to be built, which should have a seed bank, we should have a clean dry yard, we should have a primary and secondary processing at the village level or the block level. And it should also have, because we are talking about nutrition issues in the urban areas, what about the rural people, what about farmers who has to work in so much of harsh weather conditions? So there has to be some local retail has to point has to be there. So all these things should be taken care of the grassroots level, but there is no focus. I've been in the multiple forums in the last 3 years, there was no focus on building this grassroots level. It is very fragmented. So the second, when it comes to the startup level, when we started, there were hardly any startups and there were hardly any products on the shelves. Now there are like about more than 500 startups, and we can call, if somebody is making 5 crore rupees money, we can call them as unicorn. So it is very tough. So the people are like as small seeds as millets. The entrepreneurs are also very small and they have no capability of taking this industry in a very big way. And then comes the government and ecosystem level. And thanks to the International Year of Millets, there was a lot of talk. In fact, that is the reason that we all met also in multiple forums. And now the International Year of Millets is over, so I am yet to see a clear roadmap, how it will be taken care. Unless until this is a 10 years roadmap or 20 years roadmap, we can't build this industry again. So there has to be very strategic roadmap, and there has to be strong players coming in, and the basic problems of the farmers should be solved. And the consumer awareness. This morning, my partner and my colleague went to one of the company, and then he was telling that he asked his wife to pack millet food, and she said, today is Thursday, it is poor people's food, and I don't want to pack that for you. So this is the kind of perceptions we suffer with, problems of a lot of these perceptions. So yes, this is just we are coming back again after 40 years, so a lot of challenges, but we all have to work together and solve it at all levels, at farm level, and then processing level, startup level, and the government level.
No, I totally agree. Actually, we have been unfortunately, in the hindsight, when I see 1960s and 70s, it is great to have a green revolution. But what green revolution has done is that, see, the most sustainable and nutritional crops are pulses and millets, right? And today we are struggling in both, right? While we are exporting rice and we are exporting sugar, which is taking away liters or liters of water. So 3,000 liters odd for rice and 4,000 odd liters per kg of sugar that we are exporting, while we are making pulses and millet suffer. I think that need to change. Just last question to you, what policy intervention do you see? What would be your recommendation, 3 recommendation to government, what they need to do to ensure that we really reach where we should in millets?
So for now, one of the most important things they have to sort out is the grassroots level infrastructure for these millet farmers. So it has to be an integrated, like a millet park, where they have to provide seed availability is one of the biggest issue, and it cannot be sustainable. Even if I have to go and set up this kind of integrated infrastructure, it cannot be sustainable. So the one time installation of that infrastructure has to be very, very generous, and they have to get all the players. So this is one of the issue that has to be solved. If they don't solve the problem of this price fluctuations and all, this industry, we can't actually go a long way. Only if the farmer is comfortable and if he is getting good income, then they will stay in the game for a long time. Otherwise they will stop growing. So that is one of the biggest issue that they have to solve.
No, surely we'll work together, and we'll go to government and asking for all these things which are very, very critical. So now going to you, Kunal, we understand sustainability has been always seen as a good to have, right? But are there economical reason to push for that? Because I totally agree with you, what we are doing with plastics isn't something which we should not be happy as a society. But unfortunately, economics comes in the game. How costly or how economically viable is people to switch to sustainability on just a profitability aspect? Definitely the sustainability and impact aspect can always follow.
Yeah, so I think the question comes back to us most of the times that when we go to the brands, we tell them the story about sustainability, the long-term impact, and the partnership that we bring in. But then story for a procurement manager is his KPI, which talks about, can you reduce cost? And that's where we actually look out for the real decision makers or the people who think about the vision of their brands. In fact, the consumer's awareness about picking up a product in the retail shelves in the market talks about that. No, when you pack the same material in different packaging, and one is like in a brown paper-based sustainable packaging, one is like in a very fancy plastic-based packaging, you are more intimidated now to pick up the brown packaging. Because first of the very nature that it is much more sustainable, and second, it reflects about that your own perception about how you think about yourself, right? So there is a very strong recall or uptake from the customers, like, which is something that really helps us to push this story with the brands that, can you pay another 50 paisa? So if you're packing a 1 kg of pulses, can you pay another 50 paisa, or which means 10 to 15% of the delta, to really make it affordable for, you to go and put those things on the shelves. But the other way of going about is that, there are regulations, and sustainable materials do not have a regulation, right? So when we talk about our material, which is called biofill, we can make those materials at a 20 micron or 30 micron, compared to a plastic which has to be necessarily 52 micron in secondary and tertiary. So for packaging the same product, you will need more plastics as per regulation compared to our material. So we can reduce the material consumption by a certain 30 to 40%, and then be at par with the same cost at which the plastics are available in the market. So on those aspects, we are able to really solve the problem for some of the problem statements that we get from our customers. In some of the ways, we are also trying to build an entire portfolio, right? Which means from primary to secondary to tertiary packaging. So if we do the entire offering for the partners, then in that blended case, we are able to offer them at the same cost at what they are packaging right now. The good thing is, packaging is very important. If you're exporting to international markets, Europe, you are seeing norms which are coming, and you have to comply to those norms, not supply materials and FNV and other things in plastic, right? So we are talking a lot of brands which are actually exporting in different markets, helping them in terms of both material, which means can we make it completely 100% biodegradable and home compostable, which is the innovation that we have. We help them in terms of designs, which means that better designs can help them in terms of also optimizing their overall material use in terms of packaging. And third is in terms of the sustainability story, which is also, can you build a story around if you reduce 1 ton of plastics in your packaging, it actually can reduce from plastic, which is actually adding 3.8 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, CO2, compared to a regular sustainable material, which will be around 1 to 1.2 tons. With every ton of usage, you can actually save 2.5 tons of GHG, which means 2.5 tons of carbon credits can have, if you monetize that becomes much more value. But how do you really demonstrate that? How do you actually bring that into place is something that we are always working on. So I think there is a very strong uptake from customers, even brands. The largest brands in the world have given their commitment. PepsiCo, Unilever. We are working with Unilever's, and they are talking about how can we make the packaging sustainable. So I think these are very strong headwinds tailwinds that we have in terms of helping us push our use case with different customers. They are piloting the use cases. They want to experiment and see whether the customers will pick up their products packaged in the sustainable material, which is a very good sign. And as we see more of these things coming on the shelves and more customer adoption, this will become a mainstream business, and most of them will come towards sustainable packaging. I see that happening in a couple of years from now. We have almost top 50 brands. You talk about Amazon, we have been working with Amazon for the last 4 years. And Amazon have moved completely from the plastic base. You see the e-commerce, everything that is being shipped is coming in that paper-based packaging. And to bring that strength in the paper-based packaging, we are also trying to give them paper plus biofill, which can be as good as any strong plastic that is there. So we are seeing this very strong, bigger brands having this very strong, cause for showing the sustainability by demonstrating they are not using anything which is made of plastic. This is also coming in the regulations. Government brought in this regulation in 2022, but I think in the coming years, those regulations are going to be much more stricter. In Bangalore, we have BBMP going to the stores and asking how they're using plastics and things around that. So I think consumer awareness, the regulations, and the need of the industry to move in that direction will accommodate the cost in some ways, which will make it sustainable for a longer term for them as well. And for us, as we innovate, we get the scale, we will be able to get the cost as comparable to plastic in all of the regular products that is also offered in the market. That's something that we are envisioning and working towards.
I totally agree. And this carbon credit part, it's very interesting because if large companies are getting involved in buying sustainable packaging, for them to because they also are into voluntary carbon credit markets. So for them, this stringency is not there. That whether it is certified by a benchmark company on that, then themselves they their own internal audit, and if they are able to find internally, they are actually reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, they would be very happy to do that. Last question to you, Kunal. So Kunal, do you see the sustainable packaging? One part is the market picking up. Other is that are the investments getting into this sector?
No, there are like, no, if you see India, if you see global investments, there are huge investments getting in this particular sector because the compliances and regulations have come in, which means someone has to come and innovate. Someone has to replace that $300 billion market which is existing. What we are also seeing is the players which are already in the market, they are putting up newer infrastructures. They are moving into, in some forms, into sustainable materials because that's what the consumer want. And it's a very strong like no case for us to really get that story through the sustainability lens to all of the partners and the businesses that we are operating in, and create a space for ourselves. I think that is how we see like no, investments will be coming. Like we got like no, I'm sure like no, people are aware we got the funding from Bloom. Like no, we just closed it like no a month back. So it was a 60 crore Series A investment that we raised, and just for the reason that no, you are gungo about this particular thing that's going to happen today and tomorrow. It's going to happen. So why not invest? And our promise of business is like, no, we are going to bringing this cutting edge technology. We are going to solve your problem that you're facing right now in packaging with the right sustainable alternatives. Work with you as partners to help you like, grow in the future along with us. And I think investors in the future is also going to love this journey that we are taking right now.
That's good. In fact, like, Kunal, some of the product which I saw again in the Gulf food, like, you have been doing fabulously great work, and looking forward to see, like, Bamboo becoming unicorn soon. And that's the expectation minimum actually when you are there. So moving to Saurabh, your experiences of raising fund for such a challenging sector. You have been into Shark Tank and making the waves. You have become a celebrity, right?
No. So yes, it has been a challenging journey. So right from day one, when we started this business, the focus was always on profitability and building a legacy business rather than just focusing on creating a highly valued company or, working on the valuation part. So scalability was always on the mind. And in order to build that scalability, right from the beginning, we started working on various models like the franchise model, where we have one franchise store in each taluka that in the locations that we work in. Developing different products, creating demonstration farms. So those were the key parameters that we always, focused on, and creating a very unique model that we have today. In fact, we are one of the only companies to have such model where we work on a buyback model, where whatever products that we are selling, since it's plastic, we buy back those material from the farmers at a certain price, and we recycle them and bring it back into the circular economy, where we manufacture chairs, tables, and industrial pallets out of the used material. So last year we were able to do almost more than 50 lakh rupees of recycling. This year our target is 5 crores worth of recycling to be done within our own premises. So we are doing every bit in order to be more sustainably friendly, which is what the today's ecosystem is all about. So due to the challenges that we were facing in our fundraising activities, it sort of forced us to think out of the box, and that is where all this came from. Like, we also have current capacities to manufacture biodegradable products. We also ventured into the soil testing device that you initially you spoke in the introduction. So what we have come up with, we found that the farmers, why they're not adopting to this technological products, even though they have been around for a long time, the primary reason was because they do not understand which crop to sow as per the soil analysis, because soil analysis in India is absolutely practically not non-existent. So when we came up with this soil testing device, and when we launched this, it will be the cheapest device in the country of its kind. So all those things put together sort of started building onto the journey of how we are building a sustainable and a profitable business from what we started. So we are fairly a young company. We started in 2020, and within 3 years, this year we will be turning profitable this year. So that sort of built onto the entire story of how we went about. Obviously, Shark Tank did help us in a lot of brand building activity that otherwise would have taken probably another 2-3 years. So that was a little icing on the cake, I would say. So all those things put together, and also the persistence which was required in order to pursue in a sector which was looked at as a very sort of a commodity sector otherwise in the agri sector, because nobody believed that in a protected cultivation or a precision cultivation kind of a sector would be a company which can build something which is more sustainable in a long run. So that is what we cater to, and I'm happy to probably share on this platform that we are very well on track for our series around, where we are raising 25 crores, and we have couple of VCs who have finally given us the term sheets and everything. So yeah, the journey has been tough, but it has been enriching in terms of small changes that we have made along the way in our company.
Excellent, Saurabh. So wish you all the best for the fundraising, and I believe this is just the start of the great fundraise, and eventually you will be listed somewhere. Wish you all the best for that. Shriram, to you, like, how do you see the future opportunity in hydroponics and with respect to India? Right? Do you see that also becoming because in UAE you have been talking about Aerofarm and all that, talking about $1 billion investments in hydroponics, aeroponics, those type of technology. How do you see that unfolding in India? Is it still like a little bit far away, or it's just around the corner?
Sure, Deepak. So I'll answer it in a slightly different way, right? Let's look at what is currently the facts on the ground. As you can see, I'll just take three important components, right? So one is water. So we all know what's happening across, even nationally. Like if you look at Bangalore, if you look at different parts of India, the water isn't getting any easier to access. The second one is labor. So again, with India as an economy which is developing, a lot of mainstream farm labor is being diverted to all the other sectors, rightfully so, because the economics are much better. So there is a huge shortage of labor as well in this space. And the third factor is climate change. When a few years back, they used to talk about it like it was a 100-year thing. Now, if all of you follow what's happened in Dubai, in 75 years, they've never seen the intensity of rain like what they've had. And this is only like, going to repeat itself more frequently. So keeping just these three parameters, you will see that what we were doing for the last 50 or 70 years is drastically going to change, because I don't think we can even afford to do them. If you just take data, I think in 2006, there were 1 million borewells that was deployed in India. But if you take just 2019 data, it's about 25 million borewells that are being deployed. And every year, just in agricultural pumps, we're adding 5 million pumps into this segment. Now, you can see that 80% of the water is currently being deployed by agriculture. So if you just take these three parameters, it is not a question of if, it's only a question of when. So how do you solve these things? You want less labor, you want to use less water, and you want to also be resilient from climate change. So protected cultivation, precision agriculture, and mechanization or automation, these are things which is, I think, almost inevitable. So whether it's India, whether it's Dubai, or whether it's any other part, the challenge we have inherently in India is the mindset adoption and, of course, the cost. So where we have been working extensively, and I'll give you an anecdotal evidence, right? So we just automated a 200-acre vineyard completely wirelessly. And we did it for a price of about 20 lakhs, for a 200. So per acre cost, I think it works out to about a few thousand rupees. But the alternative, if we had gone to an Israeli technology or a Dutch technology for this, it would cost them anywhere between 45 lakhs to about 80 lakhs. And I'll put another question, right? So today, there are a lot of farms. For example, in Pune, there is a company building a 150-acre greenhouse infrastructure. Is there a solution that can actually directly deploy, monitor, and control this entire cluster, which is made in India? The answer is absolutely no. Even a single greenhouse, the ones that we are deploying in different parts of our country, you will see that the irrigation system is supplied by vendor A. The climate control solution is supplied by vendor B. The farm management system is supplied. Now, they're all claiming, or most of them are imported, and they claim to be intelligent. But the fact of the matter is they're all in data silos. They don't talk to each other. They don't want to talk to each other. Then you hire the knowledge expert to come and stitch all of this together. So this was the biggest pain point, right? So what we started to do as a company is we stitched a data first integrated solution. So in this entire space can be broadly categorized into three boxes: microclimate management, nutrition and irrigation management, and farm management. Now you just stitch this together and seamlessly make data flow. The kind of insights that you get are insane. And so this kind of, our vision is, why should the farmer know everything? Can you appliance it? And a lot of people debate this question with me, but I just say, when was the last time you used your microwave? Do you remember studying microwave engineering for it? Or we take certain things for granted, right? Every time we take a car, someone's driving our car. Is that guy an automotive engineer? Most likely not, right? So a driver, a cook, everyone, all of them are dealing with complex technologies day in and day out. But somehow when it comes to agriculture, we have a different perspective on this, right? So the idea was, can we build an application layer on top of complex tech and leave the decision making away from farmers? This will do what, the UPI did for farmers, right? Or this can be that Paytm moment, one of the panelists said. So we could now, instead of giving, 50 years back, people will say, have you built your house? Today, they say, you bought a house. This is a typical mindset shift from a project focus to a product focus. So until now, people develop a greenhouse. Our vision is in future, they will simply buy a greenhouse, which will be an integrated, like a Tesla car or an Ather a bike. You will go and buy a fully integrated farm, whether it's a container, whether it's a greenhouse, or whether it's a precision tool for 1,000 acres of irrigation. It will be made locally with a complete knowledge layer sitting on it. So it's not just operating the system. It can also tell the farmer how to grow the crop. So this is kind of the area, right? And this is geography agnostic. Like we just take UAE. There is a location called Alain. They have 28,000 greenhouses in a span of just one, let's say a city of Goa, maybe even much smaller. And now
far smaller, in fact, far smaller than Goa.
far smaller, right? I'm sorry, maybe I'm getting that data wrong. It's far smaller. But here's the thing: the government keeps dishing out money. They have zero visibility on what the farmers are doing. The farmers themselves, because they don't need to farm, they just take the money and the colloquial term there is, give it to some patans. So basically, they come and then they build these miniature units, and nothing grows there. Now, with the help of integrated solution, we are doing something like a meter. So we are giving each of these units a hybrid control system, but at the same time, it gives out valuable insights to the government on what the farmers are doing, what is the kind of micro and macro scale. So this kind of micro environment and micro data accumulation is what I think will make a large impact. Of course, there are a lot of incredible companies building the macro data layer. But what happens to the micro data layer? What happens to the arms and the legs? What goes into the soil, connects to a wire? I think that's the area we're trying to solve. And you said container, right? Let's it as unrealistic a case that it sounds. Just I'll paint a picture and I'll stop with that. Let's look at the Siachen plain. Almost 50,000, and with the current events, it can even go to 100,000 soldiers could be positioned there. The nature of the terrain is such that a truck can go only once a week up and once a week down. Now imagine if you can put a 200 container cluster that's growing there day to day. So it could save so much energy, effort in order to get the highly perishables to these people. So the use cases are plenty. It's just that it's not mainstream. So we are betting on a future where all of this will become mainstream at some point, and we want to be the pioneers at that.
No, I'll take it beyond Siachen. I would say that an international Earth station somewhere in the space growing the food for astronauts so they can live there for a longer time, or maybe on Moon someday. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Shida, for that. Now, finally, Amandeep, to you, again, coming to the funding part of it, how do you see investors' interest, right, or disinterest in drone based solution providers like yours? How have been your experience in if you are raising funds, or if people who are raising fund, what are the struggles and challenges, or any message you want to give to investors who want to invest in drone sector?
I think investors have been have always shied away from investing in the drone space, as per my experience. But as government eased out certain norms and eased out certain regulatory challenges, came out with the all these incentives and all, it boosted some confidence, and then new business models also emerged that further led to some interest. And then thanks to certain IPOs that happened in the past, like Idea Force, Drone Destination, Drone Acharya, like those IPOs led to increased interest into the drone space, particularly with the investors. Uh, so, but there's still some concerns over the scalability, over how the competitive advantage would be maintained over time, and how the revenue streams could be generated. And what I think is, as far as agriculture goes, there has to be a comprehensive solution that we can offer. So if we have to offer something to a farmer, with a drone, it just cannot be a one single shot solution that I give you say advisory, and you pay me X rupees. It has to be beyond that, because the touch point has to be maintained over a period of time, because you are not doing it's not something that farmers always look out for, and most of the times farmers even have apathy towards solving or knowing that there is a crop issue on their fields. So that's why as per my experience, this has to go in as a comprehensive solution. But investor interest could be boosted if we can demonstrate scalability, and that comes with certain models. I think we feel that creating these franchisees could be really helpful, where one rural entrepreneur or a FPC could be provided with the equipment which they can operate, and then the data which will come in, we can ingest the data and give out the advisories, and then they can work with the farmers on the ground. Uh, and then even beyond that, there could be other opportunities that could open up, particularly like in the forestry, or on the ancillary aspects of the business. For example, using data acquired for drones for the insurance, or for the agri-input companies, for agri-commodity companies, for various use cases. And this could be one of the key drivers, that could boost investor interest. Uh, and yeah, I think that are the key thoughts that I have right now.
Perfect. So I also believe that government scheme of Drone Didi can be scaled up, and maybe every woman entrepreneur in more than 6 lakh villages of India would be flying drones someday, which will give you a good traction in the market, good sales, and eventually investor interest. So again, wishing you all the best. With that, we come to end of this very interesting discussion with different sort of entrepreneurs coming from different sectors. We have covered dairy, millet, controlled environment farming, futuristic farming, drones, and very importantly, the sustainable packaging, because definitely I would love to have millet with beautiful milk, but all packaged sustainably. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
So
Thank
now,
you.
so now we go to the last segment of our discussion. So today we are having Adil. Adil is having a excellent event, Agri-Fundex, happening in Dubai on 7th and 8th. And Adil, if you can have you, yeah, excellent. So Adil, floor to you. We would like to understand what great thing you are doing in Dubai. Like now no flood there. I think like a lot of people can travel. Initially there were some apprehensions that like there could be issue, but I think now like weather is clear to all of us to land there. Floor to you. Can we understand a little bit about the event and what you are planning?
Thank you, Deepak ji, for having me. And firstly, on the situation in Dubai, we are working with our local partners to ensure the event's going to be in a safe environment. And right now, about 30 minutes ago, the news we've got is that there are no particular floods, but there was mild rain in the morning. So things are all working and everything's going fine. So the event's safe, the event's going on, so everything's good. So I would just like to say thank thank you, Deepakji, for having me today. And I'm here to speak about AgriFundX. It's a conference and exhibition that we are doing in Dubai, where we are trying to connect agri-tech startups with the potential investors. And the main mission behind AgriFundX is just bridging the gap between agri-tech innovations and investment. And our next edition is happening in Dubai on the 7th and 8th of May, and we are also doing subsequent events after that in Mumbai and in Bangkok. So I would request everyone to join the event, and if Dubai is not happening right now, there's an event happening in Mumbai in the month of September, and then in Bangkok. So see you all over there.
Perfect, Adil. Thanks a lot for joining. And I believe, Dubai is a great place to do business. So most welcome. I believe, with the only big purse sitting in Middle East currently for tech startups, it could be a great destination. And Mumbai and Bangkok, I believe, you don't need any invitation to come to Bangkok. So I believe a lot of people will be there. And Adil, wishing you all the best for this great event. And congratulations for your team for putting all the effort. And this is, I think, very important to give a platform to startups, investors, stakeholders, think tanks to come together and discuss how we can take agri-tech not only in India, but within the region forward. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
So guys, there's the last, goodbye to all of you, because we had great sessions. And just if I have to add, we had the 5 roundtables, 66 awesome speakers, all talking about different things. We have government officials, bureaucrats, we have got investors, we have got tech startups, input companies, output companies, industry leaders. And I would like to thank all the audience to participate in these roundtable. So till we come back with another set of discussions virtually and physically, stay safe. Thank you.